have you here, and as we bring to a closure the enormous amount of work that our staff, you yourselves and our community have done in regard to the reserves management plan and all of the consultation. And I know when we had our 2 days back in June, it was 6th of August. Doesn't seem like a long way away, but it seems to have come around really quickly when they had to get these 2 folders back out and dust them off. So, but it's good to have you back with us, Maria, as you take us through this morning. Thank you. So we do have our usual meeting agenda, and I'll just work through our order of business. I just would like to offer an apology for the first item on today's agenda, the reserve management plan for Councillor Dave Hislop. Do I have a mover and a seconder that we received that? Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, Karen. All in agreement that we received that apology, please say aye. Aye. Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Health and safety procedures. We're all very aware of what we need to do should we need to exit this building and our assembly points. But gosh, when I woke this morning and heard about the 4.8 in Wellington, and it was felt right across almost Central and South Island as well. Not that I felt it, but it does give us a timely reminder of what our earthquake drill would be as well. I will begin today with the normal procedure and read the affirmation, which reads: we pledge that we will faithfully and impartially use our skills, wisdom and judgment throughout the discussions and deliberations ahead of us today, in order to make responsible and appropriate decisions for the benefit of Hapinui District at large. We commit individually and as council to the principles of integrity and respect, and to upholding the values that we believe distinguish and enrich our district. Thank you. In regard to items on the agenda today, and we've only got the 2 decision items, but is there any conflict of interest declarations, councillors? Okay. And we have our usual recording of the meeting room.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Any urgent business that we need to attend to today?
Sorry, I was just thinking about conflict of interest declarations in the 26-27 June meeting. There were some noted. So,
okay, right.
I presume that they're carried over for this, because it is a separate meeting.
Yes, good point.
Noted, but yes, if I carry those over.
Okay, so if we look at page 4 on the minutes, so we've got Councillor Bailey, Councillor White, Councillor Armstrong and myself had noted those conflicts. So with your support, we will just ensure that those conflicts are recorded into these minutes as well for clarity. And yep, are you comfortable? Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if I may, just before we get on to the minutes of the 26th, 27th, I'm just going to ask that if I could apply for a leave of absence. This is for the 5th, between the 5th and the 19th of November. I know I've shared with you a wee while back, but I thought I should formally make this happen. I've been invited by Mayor Dan and the Waimakariri District Council and the Amberley and Rangiora, Rangiora and Amberley RSA to attend an Armistice Day ceremony in Zonnebroek in Belgium and visit the war graves. This is likely to be a formal celebration, and I will represent the district, but I just want to make it clear to everybody that I'm personally funding that trip. So if I may request leave of absence between those 2 dates, the 5th and the 19th of November. Gary, thank you. Pauline, thank you. All in agreement that there we Get that, is that aye?
Aye.
Against, that's fine, thank you very much indeed. Rightio, so that does take us through to the minutes, and we're looking at page 3 of our agenda. I will just work through these for accuracy first and foremost, and then we'll look to see whether there are any matters arising before we get in to complete our, we'll start with our Cheviot reserves, and then we'll look at the general policies. That's what we've got the remainder of this work to be done. So on page 3, just looking for corrections. Page 4 and 5. Maybe we got a time because these are pretty complex minutes, Graham, and I think you did an outstanding job. Pretty impressed. Page 6 and 7. I think who's this?
Just on page 4, the conflicts of interest, I see I haven't got to the Met Advisory Committee as well.
Okay. So we need to include that in today, and that will swing into these minutes also. Oh, exits. So page 4, 5. Page 6 and 7. Page 8 and 9. 10 and 11. 12 and 13. 14, 15.
I'm sorry, I probably should have done this prior. Page 15, paragraph 5, just where it talks about me visiting the site. Can we have that revisited, please, rather than visited?
Right. Page 14, 15, page 16 and 17, 18 and 19, 20, 21, 23, 24, 25. Karen, I'm just looking, and you'll probably be able to help me here, but just looking on page 24, when we're talking about the Hiranui reserves, sort of halfway down that it noted, she noted that Waikato Hills freehold land, blah blah. Then the next she noted there might be a move to legally separate the bottom. Oh, beg your pardon. No. She noted that Waikato Hills on freehold land, revoking the reserve status of the Harden RSA and dispose of it to fund a new hall. Do you think that that should also include the Harden Hall? And that for clarity, or should it just be, I know we're going to revoke the RSA, but not necessarily revoke the reserve status of the Harden, but I'm just, do you think that needs a little bit more clarity to include the Harden Hall will be disposed of, likely or not?
Yes, I haven't covered that really in there, have I, at all? That's a good point. I suppose we're just, as I might have alluded to in the past, we're just going through a community consultation start phase to get a steer on that. But yes, that would.
I think it's confusing because we're looking to revoke the Harden RSA Hall, but not necessarily looking to revoke the Harden Hall reserve status because that will remain a reserve.
That's
but
correct.
But the Harden Hall might be part of that. So I don't know whether it reads sufficient. It may read sufficiently well, and I'm just reading something into it that shouldn't be there, Karen. Maybe we think about it, and I'll carry on.
I mean, I probably didn't. I don't think I did mention the Harden Hall during this comment that I was making. So. Whether you can retrospectively edit or what, I'm not sure.
Right, okay, so you're happy with it the way it's written?
Yes,
okay.
I think it's okay.
Okay, I'm okay with that if it's reflective of your thinking, I guess is what.
It's got to fund a new hall, and I may have said that, but I guess I was meaning facility rather than hall, you know, if that makes sense, Graham.
Does that give you some clarity? Yeah, I know it's confusing when we're trying to look at the construct of it, but I don't want to make it more complicated.
I was just trying to reflect some of the strategic thinking that was behind the evaluation or review of some of those things. Yeah.
That's been there in the matters arising to explain about Harden Hall.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll leave that with you.
If we, yes, if
okay.
we do it that way, that would
Okay.
be good.
Cool, thank you. Did you hand up all
Yes, sorry, I'm back on page 21. I was trying to find this. The second to last paragraph on the bottom and the discussion around the Cop Art Reserve. And when we talked about the preclusion of the windmill, I believe we discussed there that it was actually precluded because they were not permitted within the current reserves management plan, rather than that they were not being council funded.
I don't recall that discussion, but I'm happy with.
Yeah, I don't believe there was a discussion about funding, but rather that they could not pop that in there because there was no allowance for it in that present plan.
Yeah, with you, thank you. Okay, so we'll pop back to page 24 and 25. And our last page here is page 26. Okay, Robbie.
Yes, third paragraph down, second line and page 26.
Yeah.
Might be more limited vocabulary, but I don't know what I said there because I don't know what the word is.
Well,
What is a PO? From what I understand.
It's the statute. The PO.
you know,
right,
the
thank you.
statutes
That makes more sense.
Yeah.
Now. Thank you.
It may be POU as PO.
Yeah.
Correct the spelling.
Correct the spelling. Yeah. Okay, you happy with that, Robbie?
Yes, no, thank you. Makes sense.
Awesome, thanks everybody. So we have worked through those minutes and, you know, as again, I just want to say, Graham, well done. That was a lot of work to gather into that, but we've got some minor corrections there, but councillor's happy to move that we receive those minutes as those minor corrections. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Karen. Vince. All in agreement to that, please say aye. Those against? That's carried, thank you. So, yep, we've accepted those minutes, and if we can just perhaps step through the pages again to consider any matters arising. Page 3, 4 and 5. Page 6, 7, 8 and 9. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15, and 17, 18 and 19, 20, 21, 23, page 24. Thanks, Sarah.
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. I note on page 24 when I was discussing the Hiranui reserves that I've not mentioned the Harden Memorial Hall. Now that sits on the Harden domain, and one of the options that the community are being asked to consider relating to the upgrade of the rugby club rooms, the United Rugby Club rooms in Harden, would be the demolition of, with the idea that the rugby club upgrade would provide a larger venue and gathering place or facility for open the area. And yeah, that perhaps if we could just note that in that context as well, that could give a more complete picture of the intention.
Thank you. Good on Karen, thanks very much. So that, yeah.
On page 25,
Yeah.
Up from the Chivett reserves, just a question I've really got for staff is when you're leasing out these reserves, do you come back to the advisory committee to get some input into it? Because just to some clarity, these reserves advisory committees look after them, but they get a bit rejected when a property, say, oh, we've leased it to someone XX and they've had no input into it at all. Because under the lease, you can reject a lease, say if the money's not good enough and say, well, we'll re-tender it. It's not only just staff, property, because they are community, at the end of the day, the community is
Some of that to the general policy as well.
I'm just wondering in the
Maybe-
reserve management,
Someone want to answer that?
Can you answer that? Be quite happy to answer that. I think our intention is always to include the reserves advisory group, and usually when a lease comes up for expiry or renewal, we would be in touch with that group in plenty of time to see if there'd been any issues or if we wanted to make any changes, if we suggested any changes, and then to gain that. We've been working through quite a few leases and licenses at the moment, and working out a plan and sort of and we'll be going to those groups with a list and saying, right, these are our recommendations, are you in support of that? Or are there any issues that you have to bring those?
so just a question, so when you get your tenders, do you go back to these groups again and say, this is what we've got, is it acceptable?
Generally, yes, if we've been out as a part of a tender process. I'm not aware that we're in any tender processes at the moment, but there is likely to be some coming up as they expire. So especially in regards to grazing on recreation, specifically recreation reserves, it's once that comes up for expiry, it should go out to tender. And so we would have that conversation with the advisory group to get their input on where they see that, how they would see that.
But you don't, when you've got your prices, do you still then go back and say, is this a reasonable price? Because a lot of the time, the local group, really, that's just.
Sure. I think there's some rules around that, around accepting of tenders and that actual process. So that's not something I've actually worked with yet. So I'm looking forward to my first one and then getting my way through that. If there was any concern around it maybe being too low and along those lines, we will definitely come back to the reserve group. And we will gain that information at the start and say, you know, what are you sort of thinking? What are we looking at? What do you think would be a required sort of baseline, so that we've got an indication right from the beginning, we can potentially address that earlier on in the piece.
Well, good question, Vince, and you know, I think that Gina's response has probably given some general confidence that it actually the loop needs to be with
because
council and community. Yeah.
Because I've seen a breakdown in it
Previously.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just, and it just sort of breaks
Connection.
yeah, and you know, people get a bit of bad feeling.
I have confidence that I know Glenda will continue with that and the information that she's given us and makes, you know, be certain about that loop of information and knowledge. So great. Thanks, Vince.
Thank you. So just following on from that too, I think one of the issues that's come up from time to time is the cost of processing some of those leases, where effectively it's grazing the land and it's not even necessarily returning much of a profit, but it's actually maintaining the land. So that's been a bit of an issue sometimes, hasn't it, Vince, where the cost of doing all the paperwork is actually more than the value they're getting out of the land. So it's all part of that conversation.
But I'm just trying to see if we can build it into them, because it's all part of their management plan, and you're doing a great job. People come and go, and we can have new people that don't actually understand the linkages. But I think you understand.
Very much so.
Yeah. But great question, great response, and we look forward to seeing that working in practice and you know, building that connection, critical connection with the community. Can't remember what page we're up to, but I think 24, 25, is that correct? Page 26, matters in writing. Well done, team, that's fantastic, thank you. And yeah, there's a lot of information captured in those minutes, so it's an intense couple of days, which was a while ago now. But anyway, well, Maria, we welcome you back. We have got our first item on our agenda today, which is the reserve management plan. We've heard our submissions, and we all understand now. And I think when we left, we had the we've done pretty well. We have the Cheviot reserves to consider, and then look at the general policies. So perhaps if I can ask you to remind us or get us back to that point, and then we'll work that through.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to do it again in terms of the process that we followed in June, which is to go through each individual reserve under the Cheviot reserves. Then we'll go through the general policies and the aims and objectives and addressing any points that our submitters have made through the Cheviot reserves and through the general policies. Then at the end of that process, there'll be a little bit of a wrap up and a clean up in terms of any other points that submitters have raised that we haven't captured through this process so far. So I will run through those at the end of the general policies and the Cheviot reserves. So I'm going to pass it over to Judith for the first section of the reconvene hearing. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so in your hands, Judith, thank you.
So we'll just follow the same process, flipping page by page. And I'm a little bit confused about whether we considered any of the Cheviot ones or not. So for the sake of making sure that we do them all, we'll start with Brophy Werribee Reserve, and I've got noted that in the minutes that it was agreed that that one be removed from the reserve management plan. So that's the other document that had some yellow highlights on it as well. And so that's that one. And it was in when we were going through that list. So next one is Buxton Camp and Playground Reserve. And the two submissions I've got is that John Priest. He is submission 115, and from Maxwell submission number 220.
Page numbers for those submissions. Sorry, Judith.
It's going to just take me a little bit to get back in the swing of this.
Yeah.
One's not reading too fast today. So, sorry, John Priest, his submission number 115.
These ones on 113. Well, that's what I've got.
Page one.
Page 113.
And it looks like this is the start of the submission.
So if you go to 115, that's when he starts his specific comments. That's where he makes comments about and playground reserve.
So he's talking about the reserve, the camp where those microcarpers, Judith, that are in the actual campground.
So he's
I'd actually leave them alone at the moment because you disturb them, you most probably end up with the sea in there.
So,
and there's work going to be done down there which would stop the undermining of those microcarpet trees.
so in the current,
Sorry?
we need to talk about that.
the current reserve doesn't identify doesn't discuss,
No.
talk about the microcarpers anyway. In the existing, if you look at the draft on page 4. Yeah.
Wasn't this concern around that in regards to the top heaviness and health and safety moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's the headers they come up there.
Yeah.
Well, it talks about them being getting older and more top heavy, so I guess that is a risk element in there, Pauline. And replacing them with NIO, which is tolerant coastal, so, but in the specific policy on page 4, it actually talks about NIO and other coastal broadleaf plants anyway. So do we need to pull that through when it's already there?
So through you, Madam Chair, there was a suggested sort of revised wording that reads that progressive replacement of macrocarpus with NIO and other coastal broadleaf plants be undertaken to help reduce the effects of seawater inundation and risk of large tree falling. All words to that effect.
Yeah,
Way to address,
yeah.
once, like progressive replacement, not complete replacement all in one go, but as they do.
Yeah, it's just managing them really, isn't it?
Yeah, that kind of makes sense, that
Which
wording,
is
doesn't it?
what's happening.
Yeah, so I feel pretty comfortable with that. Do you feel comfortable with that, Vince?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think those words probably could be folded.
Yeah.
And then Catherine Maxwell on page 220. So she's got some quite specific changes.
Look, just similar to John, though.
No, so
Yeah.
again, they're really management issues
Yeah.
for the advisory group to work through. If it
Yeah.
needs a new sign or it needs some cleaning up, that would be,
Maintenance.
yeah, I don't think that
Kind of
needs
It's
to
just
be.
camp management.
Yeah,
Yeah, the intents, it's kind of the same, isn't it?
And they're on to a lot of those things already anyway.
Yeah.
so then back to 115. 116. I can get some forwards between Catherine's and John's.
Yeah.
116 is the Buxton Creek picnic area and foreshore reserve.
Okay.
Which is on page 5.
In terms of suggested sort of updated wording.
Yeah.
The under specific policies, there's a couple of bullet points, that the planting of natives continue, so in the long term exotic trees can be removed. Another bullet point was that native species be replaced with species indigenous to the location. And the third one is that progressive replacement, it's the same as the previous bullet point, that progressive replacement of macrocarpus with NIO and other coastal broadleaf plants be undertaken to help reduce the effects of tidal inundation and risk of large trees falling over.
So what happens to the Norfolk pines? That reserve?
So my understanding from the suggested wording here is as long as they remain, they will stay there until.
So if
Such
one
time,
died, they couldn't put another Norfolk pine there.
That is my understanding. However, that's something that can be discussed. Because that, with this wording, that would definitely be the case, that once a Norfolk pine did fall over or died or what have you, then that would be replaced with a native that's indigenous to that location.
What do you think?
Well, Norfolk pines seem to grow there, and they're not invasive. I think it needs a wee bit more, that you cannot, it's quite prescriptive, isn't it? How can we make it less prescriptive?
Yeah. So that would enable a replacement with pine if that was.
Of a suitable tree,
Yeah.
because the rest of it will go in natives, it's just if there's
Yeah.
no pines there.
Okay, so we just want some wording that's sort of aligned with this, but actually doesn't actually shut down.
It gives you a wee bit of revenue.
That makes sense, you happy with that?
Yes.
Yeah. You got that, Maria?
Oh, the one I sent through yesterday, there's two, there's the points that we need to address.
Yeah, that's
Now,
the
for
second.
schedule, and then there's the outstanding ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
In what page is it?
Yeah, page number. But it is,
Oh, yeah, right, I've got it.
Got it?
Oh, yeah.
Got it.
So we've picked up everything we need to pick up?
I don't have anything else, any
Okay.
other submission for that reserve.
So we can move on to the next one, which is the Esplanade Reserve.
Yes, and I've made a note here, it's about what it's called. So on the map, it's called the Limestone Knob. No, it's called the Dock Limestone Reserve, and then also got Limestone Knob, which looks to be outside of the reserve. So we just need to check what dock actually call it. And you should know, I mean, I think it's the Dock Limestone Reserve, and that's not, that wouldn't be in this reserve management plan.
Because it's a road reserve round behind it, it's road reserve, isn't it? Because it's always been a road reserve, because if the sea came in there, I know we talked about it, the road could go around through the road reserve.
Right.
There's a road reserve around the, where it's got sort of the knob look out.
Yeah.
And then there's a sort of a canyon through behind.
So are we saying we need to clarify that the name to reflect it? To reflect that Esplanade Reserve, is that what you're saying, Judith?
Yes, I thought somebody raised a point when I was speaking about the Limestone Knob.
It's a dock reserve.
Yeah.
Was that Jane Demeter?
Sorry?
Is that Jane Demeter? Did she talk about that? And you gave more information about the
She
name?
suggested a name change,
Yeah.
Limestone Knob to Limestone Lookout.
Yeah,
And she says it's a change to remove pest species rather than specifying specimens in her submission on it.
Okay, so
Right.
we just perhaps need to check.
I think that's submission 60, page 199. Am I not maybe?
yeah, that's one. You're talking about.
No, maybe it wasn't her.
No,
It was somebody though.
yeah,
If you can leave that one with us, we'll
Yeah.
have a lot
Yeah.
back. We'll find that submission.
Yeah.
I just can recall that conversation, but I don't know.
I think it was tabled, I've got it as a loose sheet where I've cut through there.
Yeah, this is, that's what I
And
read out.
that's what Vince is
Oh,
writing.
She tabled.
And so, would you want that?
Okay, all right, we'll work through, that submission point and the change.
okay.
Sorry, I've just found my notes on that as well. I just wondered, what's the process for a name change there? Because I had that question as well in regards to we're not there yet, but the Cheviot Old Hall Site Reserve.
Yeah, so, through you, Madam Chair. If it's just something that we refer to and it's on road reserve, we would probably take a report to the Cheviot Community Committee, get their support for the name change. It's part of the reserve, then we wouldn't even attempt to change the name.
Thank you.
We need to just look and see what the sign says, because if there's been money spent in writing a
Yes.
sign, we'll have to go through the whole thing, where do we find the money to pay for another sign?
Dave's not here, but a little bit of pragmatism would need to apply.
Well noted.
Rightio, so we have addressed the issues of the Buxton Esplanade. And that's it.
Yes,
Yeah, so let's move on to.
So I haven't got anything for Kevin Street Playgroup Reserve. Have you, Vince?
That's still fit for purpose in the wording.
Well, it's not a group that's, because it used to be the old play centre, but there it's already the preschool that's run as a business.
Yeah,
So it's leased out there, it's not.
So that, and that's what it says in the introduction.
So it's not really a play.
So it talks about future development, the reserve, as well as a local community, as well as a preschool facility. So actually, that's no longer future development. That is an existing, because that's what's happening now, isn't it?
Yeah.
It has been for a number of years.
Used to have, was originally where the play centre
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that just needs to shift out of future into the introduction of that's actually what's an existing.
Yeah,
It's a, yeah. And there's no further future development really for that site, is there? You know, it is what it is. Yep, good with that?
I just wondered in regards to that, that's another one that the name is perhaps quite like the play group. Does it just need to be the Kidman Street Reserve moving forward?
Yeah, we'll need to look into that. That's something that when we bring this whole thing back for council adoption, we'll make some information about what that renaming process is.
Yeah.
because the intersection of Rolleston and Cadman Street, there is actually a,
That's right, so yeah, so right at the point of that reserve here, there is separated off from the
yeah.
preschool lease site, there actually is a little playground there, swings and slides and seesaw and whatever, right on that point there, which is public domain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess just
Yeah.
from someone from the outside looking
Yeah.
in, I kind of just
Yeah.
got the sense that it's no longer a play group reserve, it's a playground reserve.
Yeah.
That's just pedantic.
I mean, now's the time to.
Yeah,
so that we can, and if it doesn't, it's not too costly or clumsy, I guess we can do this, can't we, really? Yeah, radio's happy to move on.
Yep.
You happy to do that?
Yes.
Next one, Cathedral Road.
Road, so we did talk about, I do recall talking about this one.
Yeah.
And we agreed, after quite a bit of discussion that it would be removed.
Yeah.
So, I think we dealt with that when we went through the list with the local purpose reserves, and the yellow highlights, we talked about that one.
Yeah.
Um,
On that one.
Cheviot Bowling
It
Club,
wasn't actually originally taken for quarrying, it was the old road reserve, 'cause the road goes around through it, the old road.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what you identified in the previous minutes, and I think that came through Mr. John Priest's submission, and I recall that discussion, I think that we've got that sorted. Yeah. Sorry, Bowling Club?
yes, the only submission I've got on that one is John Priest. On page 116.
I've just got a question for all of his submissions really, he's just got one plan for them all, and that's plant within natives. How sustainable is that, how affordable, you know, to go around and on the submissions and plant everything, we won't get any income, because we can't lease it, it's no grazing, and some of those reserves, that's how they get their income to do on the main reserves. And I'm just really questioning how, like he's even got the bowling, paddock at the back, planted all. And was that piece of ground actually looked at for holding for stormwater and Cheviot? Is that the piece of ground?
Pass? Can you help us here, Hamish?
No, I can't.
No, okay. So, I mean, I guess when I read the introduction, the only thing that I put a line under was the land is subject to a lease agreement with an expiry date of 2018. So, you know, that's, but the rest talks about the bowling club, maintained at high standard, well utilised, balance currently grazed for maintenance purposes. Is that?
Yeah.
You know, we've had some information come through, but we need to evaluate that information of the submitter and in the context of that parcel, isn't it really?
Yeah, I mean, I guess and we'll come to that in the general policies, but there is a general policy that says, exactly, but 60% of reserves will be in Indigenous vegetation. So, there is some, and it's not a new policy, that's actually in the old. The existing reserve management plan, so something we need to think about as well.
Yeah.
And whether it's, the way around that is to say, well, I mean, leave it as it is at the moment, but to think about future, I mean, it's a 10-year plan. So whether there's an opportunity, given that it joins the Cheviot Hills Reserve, is that there could be some native planting.
Because in Cheviot, a lot of our big reserves, like Cheviot Hills, are all in exotic trees. And same as the specimen plantation and the one up behind the school, they're all bigger in the area. If you look at, what do you mean with 60%, like you took the Cheviot area, most of it is in exotic plantings. And that's why they were kept as reserves, because that's what they were when Cheviot was split up. Why they were made reserves.
So, I guess, Madam Mayor, I mean, there is a philosophical decision that needs to be made about reserves across the district, and whether there is a desire to increase the amount of native planting in all of our reserves or not, and how do we signal that, either in the general policies, but actually signal that that might be a desire over the 10 years of the management of that reserve, that if there's an opportunity to improve native planting in them, that we do that or not.
So would the general policy be the better place to actually have some influence or have it in this specific management?
Madam Mayor, I think it needs to be in the, if that's a desire to increase the amount of Indigenous vegetation, we need to identify which reserves that might occur over 10 years and have it in the policy.
Okay, so yeah, if it was the desire of this one, we need to have it stated here as a future potential. Yes, yeah, okay. Does that make sense to you?
I'm just trying to, you know, you have advisory committees helping you with these reserves, and they do a lot of the actual planting. And they actually do a plan, and they put they do native planting, but if the ground's not suitable for native planting, they'll plant some other. So they're really planting the species that suits the area more than a specific plan that you've got to plant this, no matter that like 10 times and you can't plant them again. And I'm just trying to think that sometimes local knowledge into the policy, because it's easy to write a policy and not actually see what you're looking at.
So we need to consider what should or could go into that future development potential.
Yeah, I'm not anti. I think there's been a lot of native planting being done, and they are the right plants for the, you know, and that's what those groups are doing. So you'll find that it'll actually will get more of the reserves planted in.
So I guess we're looking for some direction as to how specific we want to have this on this reserve. I'll have we think about it, and I'll go Pauline and then Fiona.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, I was just considering that actual point in the discussion around, you know, philosophically, do we put something like that in a general policy? And I guess I am cautious because following on from what Councillor Daly said, you know, it could become very prohibitive, and it may well be that although we are pro-native biodiversity and Indigenous plants, that actually there are some of our reserves that we also want to be celebrating the heritage of our, you know, our forebears, our European heritage. And so I err towards the specific noting in particular reserves really, but not making that so prohibitive that a suitable tree can't be popped there. So I'm just cautious to have an overarching general policy that covers the whole district. And I think now's the time to put that opinion forward, because what it means is it impacts on how specific we get with each of these.
Yeah,
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I tend to agree. I think earlier on when we talked about the general policy of up to 60%, was it a minimum of 60%? There was a bit of a discussion back then. And it was made quite clear where in areas like the plantations of Indigenous, that type of plant, it wouldn't be required in those. And I just want to be sure as we go through this process that that we're very clear. And so I would agree that we probably, if we're going to look at increasing the native plantings with plants that are indigenous to that area because of the greater success, that we probably need to do that reserve by reserve. And ensure, quite correctly so, that we look after some of the other history as well. But that was made quite clear to me when I raised this question at the time, that we weren't going to suddenly progressively plant out that history.
Yeah, okay. We're sort of shaping this up a little bit now, and I'm going to ask Gary.
Make the same.
Okay.
Look, in support, and I think it's actually really important that it's stated that it's Indigenous to that area.
Yep.
Not just Indigenous in general. Yeah. So no, I'm in complete support of that.
If you look back at Cheviot though, a lot of it would be just tussock. That's all, it wasn't any trees, it was just all tussock land.
Are you looking for more direction as far as the 60% threshold, or have we got sufficient from the input from this discussion that's actually going to give some narrative that's going to fit with that future direction? Because I think that's the important piece here.
Yeah,
that we've
so,
heard some desire to have something, but
yeah.
not everything.
Yeah, so Madam Mayor, I think that we can deal with the 60% when we come to that general policy. What I guess I'm looking for here is there support on this site, the Cheviot Bowling Club, which Bowling Club is only using part of, to support if there is going to be additional planting here, that it be native planting. And I suppose, because it's a philosophical discussion, the other point, I guess, just to think about is that through, there's a lot of expectation on our farming community to plant, riparian planting, to create wetlands, and to increase the amount of native planting on their properties, and that the council perhaps should be a bit of a role model in terms of that, thinking about doing planting on its land as well. So it's a philosophical thought to think about. Oh, thumbs up.
I'm very in corner of my eye, Robbie first, and then I'm going to go to Gary, and then I'm going to Karen and Fiona and Vanessa.
Yeah, just a comment. It's interesting to me that in so many areas where these days where we're celebrating diversity and different ideas and things, except it seems to be when it comes to planting plants, and it's like, you know, we could have the whole South Island looking like native bush or whatever, but to me it becomes a bit boring. So I just like to see, yeah, native plants, the plants that grow in that area grow best in that area, that's one, and that's fine. But I just need to see a wee option kept open for if we want to have a Chinese garden or something else, that we can do that.
Thank you, Robbie.
Where my head is at, Madam Mayor, in terms of, I guess, direction, it's not policy as such, is that, yeah, we're moving to a direction of Indigenous planting where it makes sense, of whatever the right words are, particularly on sites that are basically freestanding. But at the same time, we need to be practical and reflect our European history and so on. And where in this case, we've got a site which is absolutely contiguous with the Cheviot Hills Reserve, it would make sense to me to extend the planting in those exotic trees that make Cheviot Hills the feature that it is, because this is absolutely contiguous, and somewhere down the track, you know, we own both pieces of land. It makes sense not to have a fence line with the gorgeous exotic big historical trees and then, you know, moving straight to natives. to me, it's what suits the circumstances, site by site.
I don't think we've helped apart in our contributions actually, but Karen and Fiona and Vanessa, and then I think that's all Vince's thinking go up, maybe. Oh yeah, Karen.
Thanks. I just am aware that our June meeting, we approved the support of the Canterbury Climate Partnership Plan, and it talks in there about nature-based solutions and blue-green networks, and the talk of I guess waterways and planting and being mindful of, you know, corridors for habitats and ecosystems and so on. And I guess I'm just wanting to flag that I think because we've made a commitment to that, we need to keep that in the backs of our minds as we go through this as well, where it's appropriate to do so. I also would agree with you, Gary, because this particular bottom club one is right next to the other much larger one. It does make sense to have a bit of an integrated approach across both.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, I'm just looking at page 116 from Mr. John Priest, you know, and he talks about improved connectivity and biodiversity restoration link in these areas. So, you know, we're not too far off the button, but I think that we need to just find some words in the future development of this, for this bowling club that actually enables rather than, you know, reduces the opportunity that is available to us. So Fiona, I'm keen to hear your thoughts. Thank you. And then Vanessa.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I tend to agree with the direction we're going on that with the contiguous, etc. My only concern is it seems to be every piece, and I understand the corridors, and I think it's a great aim where it's appropriate, but the burden of if we're going to go through and the cost to all of these communities to then have to go out and plant every piece of land in that and maintain them. If we're just going to have it as a blanket policy, it would have to be very progressive. Some of those bits of land that have been referred to as becoming native plantings are actually earning income for some of those communities to do other things. So that's what I'm a little bit cautious in, having a blanket statement that on all these reserves to join it up. So it needs to be a wee bit selective and overall supportive, but not where communities are actually earning the money to do some of the work that they need to do. So just finding a balance, enabling that to happen without demanding that it happens on every piece of land, maybe.
Thank you. Vanessa, and then I'll let you wrap up.
I probably haven't got much more to add. At the risk of sounding too simplistic, I don't want to picnic under a cabbage tree. I think there's a little bit of obsession. I think we're taking it a little bit too far with our natives. I think there's a fine line. So I'm really in support probably of Councillor Jackson's comments, but you know, again, I go back to that. If we are going to run the 60% rule, we have to reiterate the fact that it has to be indigenous to that area. I don't want to. I love these beautiful big specimen trees that we have in some of these reserves. I hate to, you know, end up with too many natives.
Yeah. Excellent.
Has anyone asked the bowling club? Because they're not going to be disappearing tomorrow. And I don't know if they've been in the discussion. They'll be scratching their heads a bit. I think at the moment they graze a few sheep in there that they sell. And they look after it and it's maintained. You know.
Cool. I've got Tom come again. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm listening to everything everyone's saying about natives and exotics. I would just remind councillors that native trees also provide food and biodiversity for our wildlife as well, for our birds and lizards and other creatures. So it isn't just a matter of planting trees for the sake of planting trees. It is also the biodiversity as well of our creatures. So I think, you know, it's not just trees. We have to think about that as well, the knock-on effect.
Yeah, that's cool. Look, I think without getting ourselves tied up in we're actually going to break for morning tea in a minute, but if we can just get this one signed off. I think that what I'm hearing is that we're looking at, you know, the view that you've talked about, Judith, but it actually needs to be have a sense of understanding of the implication of the area. And Indigenous planting does sort of fit with the, you know, the profile that we're all embracing, but it needs to be suitable and sympathetic to the area and the community. And I think if we can find some words that don't bind us up so much, that it still enables this to be considered over the 10-year period of the life of this Reserve Management Act, without, you know, because if the words become too prescriptive, we're not actually embracing the future as well. So, and I don't think I've heard anything from anybody speaking to this point that actually is at polar opposites to what we're just trying to find the right words that actually give us some direction in our community of Cheviot, particularly the bowling club and surrounds, some direction in that regard. So have you got sufficient?
About 10 minutes ago.
Well, aren't you lucky to have an added value?
Nice. Very sure you are very lucky.
So with that, you know, I will offer you a chance to have a cup of tea, just because of that. And we will break for morning tea, councillors, and perhaps back at 11:15. Thank you. Everybody, we'll progress through as quickly as we can. Find all the issues that with regard to the Cheviot reserves, and we're now on page 10, Cheviot Craft Centre Building Reserve. Is there anything that needs to be done, recommended for that reserve? Yeah. It's all good? You happy? Great.
No. It's not one that we're proposing. What's on my list?
From the yellow. Do I have some clarification of what's been talked about?
Yep, so we're looking at local purpose reserves and the list that we had identified of the reserves that would be removed from the reserves management plan and put into another plan.
Right.
And I did have the Cheviot Craft Centre building on that list. For now,
It
we're
would
just
seem unusual, wouldn't it, because
document. I thought that we were leaving in the community buildings.
Yeah, it was just as a flag to.
Yeah. Yeah, so keep it in, keep it in.
keep it in,
Okay.
yeah, it
Alright.
needs to be, the status quo needs to remain, that's a well-used building, and,
Thank
yeah,
you.
so we need to, yeah, so
Take that off my list, yeah.
good as, take it off the yellow list. Yep, so Cheviot Hills Reserve,
Yeah, so John Priest, on
Yep.
116
Yep.
and Kim Bestick on page 180. I think Kim's comment was just a reference to the cricket pavilion.
That site he says south of the bowling club, there's actually a walkway there, and it actually has all been planted in natives. When you leave the main road, you know, you've got, there's a track that goes from the south side of the Jed, and the state highway goes that way. You know, the end of the road going into the reserve here, and there's a walkway, that whole side's been planted in natives. That whole area, it's about cattle stock.
Is that John Priest's?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's already.
Yeah, yeah, and then, that's the comment, she's, wanting to put in specific cases. No new addition to the curriculum, to encroach on the foundation of the historic connection. 180.
118.
180. So just, this is Kim Bestick's comment. Are you okay about that, Vince? A specific policy that no new cricket pavilion or extension of the cricket pavilion encroach on the existing foundations?
Yeah, they know that.
Yeah, so we can put that in as a specific policy. That's what she's asked for.
yeah,
Yeah, that's what they're working on.
yeah, so let's just retain that.
So we'll still put that in?
Yeah.
Okay, nothing more on there then?
Radio, so moving on to pages 13, Cheviot Old Hall Site Reserve.
That's the main shed.
Yeah.
So there was some specific wording changes that came from the Cheviot Community Committee. I think they line up with Kevin Maxwell's comments. We've got those, but they're on.
There's a Pacific site there, just taken by the main shed.
Can you give me a page number? Yeah, you're looking for it.
Just
Yeah.
checking, yeah, 441 is the Cheviot Community Committee. And they have said for the Cheviot Old Hall site, the committee suggested removing the reserve as an ideal location for the erection of a community facility from the introduction and replacing it with text stating that the men's shed occupying this site is a community facility. The committee suggested removing the future development potential in entirety as the men's shed is now there and therefore the statement is outdated. So we'll
That
just
makes
make-
sense.
we'll just make that.
Yeah, that makes real good sense.
And Catherine Maxwell was on page 220. Change the name. Oh, change the name? What does she want to change it to?
She didn't say, she just suggested a name change. That was my other question.
Do you want us to look into a change of name for that?
Yeah, well, it hasn't really been brought to the community to change the name.
Right, so you're happy to leave it as it is?
I think we have to knock it down.
And I guess in the introduction, we're going to retain the Cheviot Old Hall site, so it kind of tells us if we look that up in history, 50 years ago, there was an old hall here, you know, kind of, it's a bit of a storytelling, isn't it, really? Cool, thank you, let's move on.
So this is the Cheviot Old Tennis Courts Reserve, and you,
Isn't there some boundaries? 'Cause-
if we go back to page 441, it's the Cheviot Community Committee. And they've made some quite specific recommendations as well. So that the introduction be updated to include the equestrian area and future development potential and specific policies be updated to include the equestrian area. So that's easy.
Arena. Question arena.
Oh, sorry, arena.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It looks all finished and
Yeah.
it's pretty good.
Mm.
So where's the helipad? Is that to the left of that? The helipad?
It's not on that, it's round and.
Oh, it's round.
It's on another reserve.
Oh, okay.
That's another story.
Radio, can we move on? So we've done a Cheviot Old Tennis Court Reserve, we're satisfied that we've got some story around that. The
I would
Oxford,
change the name of that. Or to the horse ring, I don't know, because it's not tennis courts now. I suppose a bit like the old horse.
Yeah.
Cheviot oxidation ponds, so we do, the map is incorrect. That needs to be fixed, and I think it was John Priest's comment 117. And then Catherine Maxwell on 220. Her comment was work towards the restoration of a significant wetland area connecting all the way through to the Jed River Bridge. I don't believe the community committee made any comment in relation to that. Okay.
okay, so.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just going back to the map.
Okay,
And saying that we'll have to remove some of the land.
right. So the map will be rectified.
Yeah.
So is there anything specific policies that needs to be managed in that site?
No.
Not really?
Oh, sorry, I was saying no to Maria. That's Catherine's comment about restoration of work towards the restoration of a significant wetland area.
I think it sort of goes though, it's the oxidation point, it becomes an operational side of it, doesn't it? Because, you know, all that, more or less all that ground is taken up by infrastructure from the bottom paddock in that one by Lynn Street, the bottom red one, it's just grazed.
Isn't the, under the future development, doesn't that sort of embrace what Catherine said though, that last sentence? Potential to develop part of the reserve into a wetland area, I mean, that's always been there.
Yeah.
I don't read that there's anything different, so why wouldn't we just leave that as a sentence to, there is a potential, but maybe realised or maybe not in the next 10 years, but it's still enough of a statement, isn't it?
Yeah, that's good.
You happy with that, Vince? Yeah, right,
So sorry, can I just go back to John Priest's point about the stormwater infiltration into the sewage? Probably missed it, so I just want to check. So John Priest has said the issue of stormwater infiltration into the sewage ponds and subsequent overflow into the Jed is of major concern to Cheviot residents. There's considerable potential to mitigate this impact through use of this land while at the same time creating biodiversity.
just tell me, what's that in relation to, the oxidation ponds or the?
The oxidation ponds.
Yeah,
Page 117.
yeah.
We talked about restoration of wetlands, so that's well covered with what you just said, Murray, including the potential.
Yeah. Sorry, Fiona.
A question of clarification, I guess. A lot of the other reserves we're talking about are ones that the community deal with. And this, I agree with Vince, this is more of a directly a council this is all part of the water treatment plant and the surrounds, I don't know. That's necessarily, I guess, I'm just wondering, we've taken some of the other things out of this thing that are more operational than reserves.
Because all I look at it is the advisory committee that looks after the Cheviot Advisory Reserves Committee. It doesn't really ever have any dealings with those ones because they just treat them like they're operational, that it's council.
Okay, so why don't we take it out and put it in our separate document?
Because it's all part of the infrastructure.
In the wetland, the west,
And you are doing wetlands anyway.
that would be part of the management.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Right.
Just an overall comment on that submission as well. We operate under a resource consent regarding all discharge from the site. We comply with the conditions of our resource consent. And there will be a new resource consent that will have to be gained. I think when that one comes in, that's the new resource consent.
Still, it's got a wee way.
And that will probably have a strict definition about what material is allowed to leave the site. Towards that.
Yeah, so
Take it out.
Okay, so we're gonna take it out.
Yeah.
And put it into that other
Yeah.
file. Yep. Cool. Here, so we're Cheviot West Reserve, which is right in town, Vince.
No comments on that one.
No, that's just your
Good.
public toilets. And
It is what it is. Yep.
Cheviot Rugby Club, so this is just the
Yeah.
addition of the helipad.
Yeah.
that is where there's some boundary changes. in.
So this, just sorry to interrupt on that one, so the helipad's actually not on the Cheviot Rugby Club Reserve,
It's on the Miller Street.
it's on the Miller Street Reserve.
Oh, okay, next door. Yeah. Radio. So the read of that is still
So it just stays as is.
Cheviot Rugby Club.
No change there.
Yep.
Cheviot War Memorial, Catherine Maxwell to move the flagpole. But I guess that's probably doesn't need to be, there's nothing in the current policies that says that the flagpole has to stay where it is. So if the community want to move the flagpole, and I would say that it would just be a decision of the community.
Yeah, and the committee, the NZAC committee is looking at shifting it because of the flagpole, because of the trees.
Yeah.
And we looked at the tree and we thought, well, it's a notable tree, we don't want to, and it is a nice tree. So it's easier to shift the flagpole to the upper side of the cenotaph.
So that's in train.
Yeah.
Yep. Radio, that's cool. Clavey Road, Esplanade.
That's one that we'll take out of the
Yeah.
RN plan, the reserve action plan. And
The Cleveland Road is the one.
Yeah, in the Conway Flat Esplanade Reserve, is that on that?
That's on the list.
That comes out, so does Derek Road Plantation.
Yep, you're comfortable with that, Vince?
Oh, we must have already talked about Derek's Road, because I've got a note, yeah, new specific policy 118, it's not suitable for natives. It's not currently planted in pine trees, so change to the introduction. Yeah. So we captured those. Old Hall Reserve. Just leased to the adjoining owner for grazing, no change?
Yeah.
Demet Recreation Reserve, so John Priest, page 118, 119. Oh, this is another one where he's suggesting biodiversity restoration. So this one is also leased for grazing. So no change?
No.
Demet Reserve,
The tennis courts are no longer operational.
okay,
We've offered the fees to the spots with reserves. will be.
So we just need to take that sentence out, the public tennis court is also available.
Yeah.
It can be deleted. Yeah, okay. That makes sense, everybody? Good. Radio. Commit, reserve.
John Priest 118, 119. This is another one, he's suggesting for biodiversity restoration. But the plan refers to this as being leased for grazing purposes, so I'm using no change. Leave it as it is. Good. Demit Stock Resting Reserve.
That's up by the toilets on the state highway.
Yeah, I think that's one we've said take out.
Yeah.
It's already in the minutes, the
Yeah.
discussion around that.
Downs Road Gravel Reserve take out. Maze Plantation,
Finley's plantation.
that's just oak trees, they be preserved, existing walkway and shelter on the plantation being maintained.
It's the hill behind the school going.
Yeah. And then it just be grazed. So no change to that one, Vince?
No.
And that's not coming out, is it?
No. So Gore Bay Camping Ground. So Catherine on the next one, page 221. She wants,
I think Catherine Maxwell has comments.
There's a few bullet points she's read.
Because there isn't a bush track up to the Learner's Grotto, really, it's all,
to remove that.
yeah, because it's a bit of a hazard. It's
Um,
fenced off.
under specific policies and within point 2, remove box thorn or weeds.
That just gets removed. It's, they're all very long reserves, they go right up more or less cliff.
So we need to.
Back of it's pretty tiger country.
She asking for it to be added.
So under specific policies, add within point 2, remove box.
You happy with that, Vince? Remove box, yeah, okay. And you mention about the hillside clamp and the instability.
So put that into the introduction.
Yeah.
What we're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
And is that also the flood hazard zone? Does that also fit there?
Not sure what she's referring to as the flood hazard zone.
Well, it does flood that creek. And then it just comes over the road.
But it's just it's
Alright.
it's coming from the grotto.
Yeah.
Because the water just comes over the.
I think she was just requesting a mention, just like the instability of the cliffs, yeah, that area is a flood hazard.
So you could probably include that in that whole instability and flood hazard.
I think we might use the word something more like flood prone.
Yeah,
Flood
that's fine.
hazard implies that it's been identified as a hazard.
Yeah, yeah.
And we have lots of little creeks that are flood prone.
Yeah, no,
Flood
that
risk.
makes sense to me.
Risk, yeah, yep, so we can just, I think soften the wording a little bit on that one.
Yep, that's fine.
At main camp, the aversion block and caretakers shed roofs desperately need replacing, well, that's just a maintenance issue for the camp. Okay. Gore Bay Reserve. Where the new tennis courts are public toilets, and so the only one I've got there is John Priest, wanting more native planting.
Could say that the courts are up to a high standard because they're all new. And there's a pavilion there.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too, Vince.
And there's a new pavilion being built on
Yeah.
the grass area between the toilets.
Yeah.
I think it's in It's a pretty, well.
It's a great place, yeah, but I think, no, that's worthy of, in the introduction, Vince.
On the outs, how big is it? Part of it has got actually some people's storage schemes, because there was some up the hill, they could not get couldn't have septic tanks. So.
Yes, it's a disposal field, it's not.
Disposal field was there, yeah.
So the public toilets, are they just over a boundary, or they?
It's looking like there's a house over a boundary in that area. So-
We'll just refer to the license to occupy that exists for that. For
the disposal field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might actually be a tank as well.
Yeah, I think so. You're right, yeah.
Is there a tank there, Vince?
Sorry?
Is there a tank there?
I'm not sure, I know there's disposal fields there.
I don't think there was enough room on any of the properties to have.
You don't have any room for disposal.
No, we can check what that is, but we'll refer to the license to.
I just think it even just gives some, a bit of protection to people themselves as well on both sides.
So we just need to find some inclusive wording that makes the picture there. Yep, that's great. Are we ready to move on to Homeview Road Reserve?
This is one, is this on the relocation list? Sorry. No, it's not Homeview. Yeah. Just John as opposed relocation. Wait, thought we were going to revoke it.
Because it's just grazed, it could be.
Yep, it's under future development potential and under specific policies that it could be considered for revocation.
In the existing plan.
Yeah,
In the draft.
it's in there already, isn't it?
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
carryover as well, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're all good with leaving that in? Huronui Mouth Plantation Reserve, this is another one that we've got in the future development potential. No current grazing lease, so the land could be disposed of. John has opposed that revoking of the reserve status. Just want to leave the revocation in, potential revocation.
Yeah, and but it is the site of an old dump, isn't it?
And can I just point out that in the minutes of the previous day, we agreed to remove the Huronui Mouth Plantation Reserve from the.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Huronui Mouth Reserve. The only comment on this one is John Press again on 119. And he's talking again about ecological restoration potential.
This is a reserve where even the advisory committee has looked at with the campground down by the river and a bit of a lack of campgrounds around now in New Zealand about making part of this as a campground, this reserve, coming off Powers Street. And just doing some planting, not even doing it straight away, but so part of the area could be used to extend the campground.
It's kind of written in existing future development, isn't it? Could be developed further for camping purposes, so I guess that's in line with the locals' thinking. That makes sense? So let's just leave it as it is.
Yeah.
Robbie, did you have a question?
I was just going to say that fits in with some of the thinking of the tourism as well and the camping, so something may come together in the future.
Yeah, very good point.
So we're happy to kind of leave that as it's written, we can put it in that potential. Perfect. Move on, Huronui River Reserve.
439, Heidi Terracarty Nash. And she's asked if this could be a space for whakaana. 439.
What's that credit going down to the bridge?
She came and spoke too, didn't she?
No, it's not this one.
Any thoughts on that?
Can we just add that in as a future development potential?
It's not saying it will happen or when it will happen, or it's just a possibility, it's enabling for that to happen.
Yeah, it's grazed at the moment. We have problems getting leasing it because it hasn't got water. Only the neighbours lease it, Mulcox lease it.
Right, okay. So we'll add that in for, as a future development and then see where it rolls. Okay. Hutchison Street Reserve.
So the Cheviot Community Committee on page 441. There's some quite specific ones, quite long. So removing with the balance of the reserve being leased for grazing, removing it from the instruction because the reserve can't be grazed. Replace the text with courthouse building on the reserve to be considered for removal as appropriate. And exclude the text in the interest of public safety. In the specific policies, the committee highlighted that the reserve is no longer a scout den. The aged pine trees referenced in the specific policies have been removed and are no longer there. And the Cheviot Community Garden is well established on the site, and the Ged River Catchment Project has undertaken significant tree and plant works on the reserve. So I think we just adopt all of it. I mean, they come from the community. So adopt all of those changes. Catherine Maxwell on page 221. And comment. Pretty much lines up. Oh, just at the Toyota Library using the old scout den. Potential for community gym. I mean, we can make a general comment about other community uses, future uses, rather than locking it down to those. So that's easy. Ged River Cemetery. So community committee on page 441. Gosh, that was important, isn't it? The committee suggested including the text folklore suggests. This is the issue that in Kenneth Sloss on page 103 and 104 has raised this issue about the items. To the accuracy of that information. So, I mean, is the council happy that we add the words folklore suggests?
That was well discussed, I think, at the Cheviot meeting, wasn't it? It was around how to use the words that might reflect some understanding or some misunderstanding maybe of the accuracy of the knowledge. So they were the words that, happy with that?
Can I just add a change of spelling? Would that be folklore, L-O-R-E? L-A-W? Semantics.
No, there's a few more on actually on this reserve. So I think Mr. Sloss's question, the maintenance, 103, 104. And then Catherine Maxwell has got a comment at page 221, John Priest on 120 and 121, and Kim Bestick at 186. Kim supports the grazing. Sorry, through you, Madam Chair, haven't you just recently granted a lease for that? So we just need to refer to the top half of the cemetery be grazed by the adjoining property. Does it need to be there or just grazed?
Yeah, it's been grazed by the adjoining.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not beddings or it's, like, so they're adjoining.
Will you matter if it says adjoining and it's a 10-year plan and something might change or what? Okay. Yep. So we're happy with the.
It'll only be adjoining, it doesn't matter by putting that in because the access, you have to be adjoining.
No, the logical, but the adjoining neighbours are logical. Yeah, great, okay.
There's only hensorts.
Yeah.
So it'll
So
be one
happy-
of the adjoining.
Happy with the Jed River Cemetery? We've got enough? What's second? Yes, thank you.
How are we going with, we've been having some questions being asked, Graham, about the cemetery, haven't we? And we covered all that.
Oh, you're talking about Lagoima requests?
Madam Mayor, I think there's just one outstanding, just around the minutes of the community committee meeting, so.
Yeah. Cool. We'll move on to page 37, so the Jed River Reserve.
So we've got Kenneth Sloss on page 104, Catherine Maxwell on page 221, John Priest on 120, 121, and Cunningham at 183. Maybe if we look at Sloss first on 104. For some reason, the words "N" is fenced off to allow regeneration highlighted.
It is regenerated.
Is it fenced off?
Yes, fenced.
He was asking for it to be completely fenced. So is it partially fenced? No, the river reserve.
In the introduction, it already says that it's, the reserve is accessible by foot and is fenced off to allow regeneration. So is that not what we've been offered through submission is exactly what we've already got? Is that correct?
That's correct.
So his comment is the reserve is not fenced off on the southern side and livestock are still wandering in. His submission point is that the reserve should be fully fenced.
Right.
I'm pretty sure it was. But we could, advisory committee, we could do the fencing.
So future development could include further fencing on the southern section, is that what we're?
It's pretty difficult. I don't know what stock would really, there isn't any much stock raised on here. I'd have to, if you leave with me, I'd have to have a wee nose to see exactly what the fence on that side's like.
But if we put it in the future development, it doesn't say it's going to be done or needs to be done, it's actually a potential, and if it's assessed and decided not to be done.
Put a potential to be fenced off.
Madam Mayor, is it that it needs to be fenced or just that livestock need to be excluded, and then that gives a little flexibility about how livestock are excluded?
So we could write that in the future development instead of talking about permanent fencing, that
just say that livestock.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of makes sense to me. Happy with that, Vince? Anything else from submitters on that, Jed? On that, Jed?
Imagine John is thinking about something. 121, yep, and come at 183. This word changing to read that Sheep River Reserve be grazed by sheep for management to control weeds and manage fires.
Detail. Do we need to? Do we need coming in?
You're not grazing the Jed River Reserve, are you?
Sorry, there is grazed, I think.
The Jed River Reserve.
Well, that's the foreshore. Oh, you're talking about the river reserve. That's not.
Yes, that's not grazed. No. Okay,
Are we all good?
move on.
Yep.
The Jed Buxton Foreshore Reserve. So submissions, Kenneth Sloss, page 104, 105. John Priest, 120, 121. Kim Bestick, 178. And Catherine Maxwell, 221. We just start with 104. So his submission is that there should be no livestock on the reserve. Just been grazed, oh yeah.
I think we'd have problems with weeds if you didn't just graze it a bit. It's not intensively grazed, really.
Right.
Okay, so not accept that submission point.
Yeah.
I'm guessing 120, 121 is the same.
Anything there?
No, and then Kim Bestick on page 178, which is she supports grazing. Yeah, so this is it, so probably does.
Through the chair, Dave, I mean, there was quite a good discussion around that on the, on actually managing that grass and the ability to get anything else up there. Was keeping the cattle off, was only sheep. Because getting mowers and bits and pieces up there, it wasn't that easy. So I think it's not just that they graze it, so it suits. I think it was discussed in the community that was a good way to manage it, to keep it tidy, was to permit some grazing there.
Is that, I think that was.
Oh, that's at the
wasn't this-
cemetery.
Yeah,
That's
that
not
was the
down here.
cemetery reserve, so.
Okay, got myself confuddled.
Yeah.
Rightio.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, I guess we could add in under the specific policies, that the Jed Buxton Foreshore Reserve continue to be grazed by sheep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You don't want cattle in bits and pieces of there, do you? No.
Yeah, okay. Right.
Okay,
McQueen?
McQueen Road Reserve. So this is just continue to be leased for grazing purposes.
Yeah.
John's Priest's continuous theme of suggesting it has biodiversity benefits.
That's really what it is. So the point that he's made here is that if this reserve, so ECAN website shows this as paying rates. To read this reserve, the potential contribution to biodiversity should be noted and retained. So this reserve is in the Amuri Pest District, so we'll be paying rates over there.
So what's he saying?
Yeah.
But it's just a flat.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's, yeah. So I guess let's go back to your point around Yeah, that's what I took. I thought he was questioning like whether there's rates being paid on that particular reserve.
So,
and the contribution that could be made to biodiversity.
right, okay, so if they're paying rates, that he's saying, if there's a rate take, it could be used for biodiversity, that's the linkage. But in actual fact, this McQueen Road Reserve continues to be leased for grazing purposes, and it probably, its future benefits are, as I stated, in this draft.
Yeah.
Is that what you see?
Yeah.
Is that right? Is everybody on board with that?
Thank you, sorry, I just.
Yeah.
Right, no change. Miller Street Reserve, so get this one, this is where the helipad is.
Yeah.
So add the reference to the helipad. Minor Road Reserve continue to be leased. Moody Street Reserve.
The minor road reserve, that could be a site for a transfer station, couldn't it? Because there's two sites being looked at, so do you ever put that in? Because you've got the Miller Street and the minor road sort of.
That's exactly what I was thinking, not so much about the minor road, so thank you for that, but actually the Miller Street, but that is the site of the potential, so should we make a future development potential enabling for that, if that goes ahead?
Yes.
We can refer to it as a potential site.
It could be better to do both of them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
covering you.
Exactly, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So I think we're reading this so that potential future development could be the site of a transfer station. Yeah, either.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or for council infrastructure.
Oh, so it's potential site for relocated transfer station.
Yeah, rightio. So we can turn the page to Moody Street, I think. Right. Yep. Anything there, Vince?
Yep, that's happy. It's just next to the campground.
Nothing needs to change?
I
Did we get anything?
Catherine
It's property though, I thought it was, how did it become a reserve? Because I thought it was in the property. Because it was bought originally to build a caretaker's house for the campground. That's what, where it was, Cheviot County, but it must have bought it, or the reserves committee down there bought it.
It was vested in 2007.
Sorry?
Looks like it was vested in 2007 as a reserve, recreation reserve.
So I always thought it was in their property.
Does it need to come out of reserve and go into property then?
Well, it's a recreation
vested.
reserve, so we don't tend to take recreation reserves out of the reserve management plan. Catherine Maxwell has said that the mature tree is a NIO. We just refer to the mature tree as being a NIO. All right?
Yep.
Okay.
And what about the dog friendly area? Is that, you talked about that as well?
And other additions.
Does Catherine have a wee bit of a conflict of interest because she actually leases the campground?
People that have come through as community members that have had grazing leases or whatever, Vince, take the point, but yeah. It actually says that in the specific policies, construction, additional structures such as a manager's dwelling, it's already written there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rightio, I think we're on Old School Reserve, is that correct?
Yes, so the community committee on page 441 asked for the addition of the half basketball court.
Already there. Isn't it?
Yeah, so just that would be, just include that. And then the removal of the reference to the freedom camping be permitted in accordance with the freedom camping bylaw. So that site was removed.
Yeah.
Two main things I've captured there.
Yep.
Okay.
Good.
Parnassus Hall. John has questioned the correct legal description of that. Which one? I'm sure this legal description is incorrect, so we will check that. That's all.
Good. And that's all written, so that's okay.
Parnassus Reserve, this only one we've got on this is John Priest saying it's suitable for, is it suitable for biodiversity restoration? But it looks like it's grazed, so.
Leave it as it is.
Yep. Parnassus Road, Esplanade Reserve. That's one coming out.
Yep.
We already agreed on that.
Yeah.
So Port Robinson Coastal Reserves.
It's a very long reserve, isn't it? It's a big reserve.
There's been a lot of plantings on that one.
Written, it's been from day 1 or 2, remain recreational, not local purpose. That's the discussion we had on day 1 or 2.
There was a bit of discussion on about the cell tower, wasn't there?
Yes, so this is that the reserve be, so in the specific policies, we've got that the reserve be reclassified to local purpose to accommodate management of and access to the communications tower. So Kim doesn't support reclassification. It's 190, Jane Demeter 199. She doesn't support it being local purpose. And Gretchen Smith at 488.
We have to, can we make a repart of that reserve?
Yes.
I think so.
I think that's what they talked about at the committee meeting, wasn't it? They were concerned about the whole lot.
And this would be advisory committee as well.
Yeah.
So we can just add under specific policies that part of the reserve be classified.
Turn the page. Raymond's good.
That's coming
That's
out.
coming out. Quarry Reserve. Coming out as well.
Oh, Madam Mayor, I think
Yeah.
from my notes, my minutes, that we finished and there's no decision on it.
Okay.
There's a rock wall.
There's one with a piece of paper or something in here. It's like, why is this piece of paper stuck here?
And we're here, Graham.
It used to be called the rock, Rose Garden,
Oh.
because that's where the night card went.
Why haven't you got that in the
Too much
introduction?
information.
Yeah. The history of Cheviot, very important. Right, okay.
So do you want that one kept in the reserve management plan or into another plan? Does the local advisory group do anything there?
Yeah, not really, no. It's not even released out, I don't think.
It says it's a season
Rock Quarry
pleasing
Reserve.
reserve with mature stands of trees.
All right, take that one out then.
Continue to be leased. You can see them in the future development potential.
So can I just ask, if we take it out of that, where's it managed?
Managed by the property team.
Okay.
I kind of wonder when it's.
They don't disappear. They just, what the Act talks about is the reserve management plan manages recreation reserves. So we're trying to make the reserve management plan more focused just on recreation reserves.
Right.
Acknowledging that there are some local purpose reserves that have a community use. So we're leaving those in as well because they're managed for and by the community. So that's the rationale of what's in, what's out.
Just tidying it up.
Yes, and then there's a separate kind of category of they're out, but we're going to look to potentially revoke them.
Yes.
So this is it's out, but not a revocation.
I see Mr. Priest is saying about the mature pine trees. If it was left with the advisory committee, we could poison those trees. Save your property team having to do it, because we've got people in that group which would go up and deal to them. I'm just asking for a management.
Is this the one above the road?
No, this is on the rock quarry, because Mr. Priest is saying.
Poison. Steel, do
it. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Where did it pop from?
I'm just saying in his submission, he's looking at these mature pine trees. Well,
So he wants
just deal to them.
He wants to be rid of them. Yeah, you guys just get onto it and do it. Job's done.
So you need to leave
Are we
it
gonna
in.
take it out here?
Yeah.
Because
Is it
then it'll be in
waste?
the,
Sorry.
that'll be
Is
the
it
property
waste?
team though.
Yeah, so then they can't.
Andrew Ashley from the advisory committee to deal to them.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, is what Rock Quarry Reserve laced?
No, I don't know. It's just,
We don't have a lease for it.
no, we don't.
It's not even fenced off, is it? From the surrounding?
I just think it's just managed from, there's no access to it, so
No,
probably
no.
can't access it.
You've got to go
anything
through
like that, so
private
it's
land
just
to get
encouraged
there.
to be managed by the surrounding landowner.
Yeah.
So it's, so it needs to come out,
Yeah.
okay.
So if we take it out, are the locals able to do what has just been suggested to be done? Yeah, okay, so Vince can take that away. You've got till September.
We can act on the submission.
Right, let's take this out and radio. Happy? We're gonna move on.
Sorry, can I just double check? I presume even though they're taken out, the process that was discussed before about the reserve advisory group being connected into any future grazing, probably not for this one, but for these ones where we're taking them out, the reserve advisory group would still be in the loop around license to occupy or leases.
Yeah, so there is, because, well, this one isn't leased, so.
No, I understand that, I
so-
just mean in principle.
Yeah, so we had a bit of a chat, the leasing of property policy needs to be reviewed. And as part of that, I think we need to do a bit more work and make it clear about what that process looks like when council property is being leased. And Glenda and I have talked about that, so.
So you're doing some thinking on that, really?
Yes, I think that there's, to provide clarity for everybody around what that process looks like, that needs to come back to council. So I've just added that onto the work program.
Okay, so we know what we're doing there. We're removing the rock quarry reserve out and, oh, Robbie, you had your hand up, sorry.
Yeah, look, I'm ending up with these bits with shingle reserves, rock quarries, all that, and all sorts of funny places. How does it go with all of these wee bits? If we were working on the Galway Road and needed some rocks, will we pop up there and grab some rocks, or does it get a whole new consenting process? Are we stuck with wee pockets everywhere around the council district that we can't use, we can't get rid of, they just a nuisance? Or where does it sit? Are these still live shingle pits, or, you know, throughout the district? We just seem to have a whole lot of funny wee pockets that you think, well, do we need even to waste a page on them if we can't use them all?
That's part of sort of the next plan, isn't it, really, you know, to take the ones out that don't sort of technically or sit under the reserve management plan, sorry. And they're gonna sit in another system, which won't need to apply some of these
And
rules.
we'll maybe refine that.
And I think that Dan spoke at the last meeting, didn't he, that he's looking at some of those sites as to whether they're useful or not as far as shingle access pits to council. So there's a little bit of work being done around that.
And then there's another little bit of work that Glenda and I also talked about in the morning too, was that all of the reserves that we've identified for potential revocation will all be put into a list and brought to council with an estimated cost of doing all of that. And then there will need to be a prioritisation by the council of which ones do we work on first. They're not cheap processes, so we may want to focus on ones where there is a financial benefit to revoking the reserve status, but may potentially they're about $8,000 a process. Yep. So that might mean a bit of focusing on which ones we tackle, or we, all of us. So that's a report that will come to council quite soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then at least you know which ones we've identified, and then we have a bit of a plan about the priority.
Yeah. Because I think we've gone around this with a pencil and ticked off, said this is a good one for revoking, but actually, we need to get that collective understanding of what that might mean, what is the cost to that, and you've just highlighted a cost that we hadn't kind of factored in, because this could in essence be a very expensive exercise for very little return, so we need to sort of weigh out those options and consider that, but we'll get a paper sometime soon around that. But so certainly some separation of what we're doing now, and if we keep stuff in that actually sits technically under the reserve management plan, what we're looking to do here.
Yep.
Cool. But yeah, let's move on. We've only got 2 pages left to my reading.
Right, Rolleston Street Reserve, got no comments. Sinclair Gravel Reserve coming out.
Yep.
Specimen Plantation Reserve, no. Oh, yes, specific policies. Remove let freedom camping be, we've never had freedom camping there, so that one's a bit weird. And so the other bit I've got highlighted, that might be from the community committee to page 441, but the accessibility and availability of water has always been a critical factor in the advancement of the reserve. However, a connection to the Hurunui Rural Water Scheme and the installation of an irrigation system has greatly enhanced the reserve's development options. This means that the existing golf course may be extended, so that hasn't happened. So that needs to come out.
It's the council water scheme, but they're using council water never came. We planted trees, but we didn't use the water.
Yeah, so that just needs amending.
So does the golf club, with the golf club plan to extend and use that, because that's kind of what it's indicating there, isn't it? In that last sentence, future development.
The golf club's not there, anywhere near that though.
So it's okay to take that out then? Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense at all.
Okay, right, we're on to it. Cool, okay.
Spotswood, no change. Sneeze Lagoon.
Yeah.
And John's comment on page 122 is needs an notes about his needs an integrated management plan, but I reflect a little bit more on that. Yeah. It's an integrated management plan for the lake as well as the lake catchment.
They have got a need of water. When it was dry last time, they got a really right to take water from the irrigation scheme and put water into St. Anne's Lagoon in dry periods. So when it gets down to a certain level, they will top it up.
Is that a one-off option, or was that a enduring?
It's an enduring thing.
So there's because it's a district reserve managed by the local community, is there a management plan for the reserve? And not this management plan, but an overall type management plan, just for there is?
Yeah, pretty sure. The reserves, need to ask the secretary.
Who's that? Okay, maybe we'll do a bit more work and see if we can
Yeah,
track
because
down.
there is that water one, when there was last drought. You can see that. Now water coming out, feed the irrigation scheme to supplement it.
Well, I mean, it's whether the and the advisory group want to do a specific plan for that reserve. So
Because they have got a planting plan and everything, because at the, in the north-eastern side of the other side of the road you drive, and they're planting that all out of natives. That area, yeah, they've been doing quite a lot of native planting. And I think a long-term plan was to try and get a track around most of it, but they've got a deal, because you've got what, freehold land, and you've got neighbours to work with them, so just police to say just, yeah, which isn't feasible.
So do we need to see Natasha's got anything?
yeah, I also think we need to be careful about that reserve because it's of significance to Mana Whenua as well.
Yeah.
And so I don't think we need to be careful that we don't rush in and do something, you know, that isn't
Conducive.
good for all parties.
Yeah.
Can I just add, like, in consultation with Ngāti Kuri, sort of just going on what Hamish has said, and he talks about the fact that it's likely to be amongst the top most 5 nutrient rich lakes in New Zealand. It's kind of got the potential to be quite not a tourist attraction, but it's got the potential to be even a case study for the rest of the country. It's got the potential to be something quite special in consultation with Ngāti Kuri, perhaps. You know,
I think we might be talking about the nutrients from runoff from farmland, as opposed to rich and natural nutrients.
Yeah.
So I think we need to be careful what we're talking about there. Yeah, I think that's. The
Because you've got
reference
to
that's
remember it's only
been made.
about native day.
we're talking about the lowland lake. We're talking about St Anne's Lagoon.
Yeah.
This is the only lowland lake in the area, and as such has a very high ecological value. It is also highly valued by Ngāti Kuri. Currently, the water quality is likely to be amongst the top 5 most nutrient-rich lakes in New Zealand.
So it's most polluted.
That's a bad thing.
It's one of the most polluted.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Be careful what you wish for.
It sounds good, doesn't it?
The problem with it, it's got silt about a metre and a half deep, and it's got about 300, 400, 500 of water. So it's actually, it's a quite large an area, but it's shallow and water.
City girls just.
So it just, it's pretty hard in the summer. You're only dealing with, and it's got no permanent water running into it. It's only straight runoff in winter that tops it up. That's why it goes dry.
So is the introduction of policies and the future development still fit for purpose if we consider or understand if there is a management plan in place, and does that reflect and, you know, is that?
So you could allow for a specific management plan to be developed, but and then if the reserve one group and community committee want to get on, and then they can do so, but
right.
But there's no prohibition from doing that possibly.
No.
Either,
So we're tying ourselves up in knots by putting something. Maybe we're better off to just leave it as it is. Does that make sense to you, Vince, and for everybody? Yeah. You know, because we can get a bit wordy here, can't we? Say that. Do we need to end the toilet?
Under the facilities, it talks about toilet picnic tables, but it'd be a good idea to refer to the new toilets.
Yeah, okay.
You could just put the year that they were installed. Then new one,
Gotta put
in
history.
10 years' time.
True.
Yeah, good work.
Okay, Stock Resting Reserve, Community Committee. I got a little bit excited by the picture, thinking, wow, this looks pretty cool. But it was 10 years ago, and no one really knows what the state of it is at the moment. Someone was going to go and have a look. Monty, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think Monty was.
Stock Resting Reserve.
Yeah.
That's Wildens have planted that all out from natives. It's been fenced off and it's all planted. I think we got some money from somewhere to do it.
Yeah, I think, that discussion, and it was, I think there was some discussion about is there potential to actually grow the cattle, to do something different to make it more attractive to community, blah, blah, but if it's grazed and fenced off, it's probably. Yeah.
Is it grazed though, or is it planted?
It's planted.
Oh, planted.
So it's not grazed.
Even in the photo, you can see all the long grass, and that was all planted. So it's fenced off because Wildings didn't want their cattle on the creek right by the road, and they fenced off all the creek, and that reserves part of it. They did a bigger fencing planting job, just got put in, sort of goes right up the creek.
So we need to change that, like future development, stock grazing will develop to stage where the land is not unsafe for the grazing of stock. The deep water holes caused by the creeks have been fenced off to the stock and planted in shelter trees. So there must be parts of it that are. Is there something that needs to be changed?
Oh, I think we need to get a better understanding of
yeah,
what's happening here in our photos. So we need to do some more work on that.
And revocations potentials also mentioned in there, so.
Yeah, but if it's all planted in natives, then we wouldn't revoke it.
No.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, so maybe we need to take that out.
Okay, so we're going to do a wee bit more homework on that.
Yep.
And it will come back when we next see this paper. And
I think Walding's got some money out of the land care group to do it.
right, okay.
And Wardrobe
It's
Reserve.
just a continuation of the Honeymoon Road on the side of the road, just.
It's got amenity oak trees on it.
Not many. They're still there, they'd only be gone if they're blown over.
Is it,
You know, I mean,
is it leased at the moment?
it's just a photo, so nothing's really changed in it.
Does someone lease it for grazing?
Yeah, it's leased for grazing.
Okay, so we just
So
leave
we
it
just
as
leave
it
it
is.
as it is?
Yeah. Water Springs Reserve. Robinson.
It's a strange one, it's just there in the middle of nowhere.
So I guess
I think
that
someone wrote something about it, didn't they?
because it's a local purpose reserve, that's one that we'd recommend gets taken out.
Because you wouldn't even know it was a reserve, you just think it's,
So we're going to remove that one. That's out of
Yep.
this process. What I might ask you to do now, Judith and or Maria, to perhaps give us, I'm just conscious of lunch, breaking at 12:30, but perhaps if you just give us a bit of a scoping maybe of how we're going to look at these general policies and just plan that we will work through them page by page, and if people have got markings that we can have a discussion around them. And
That was my intention, but happy to be guided by the council if they want to do it a different way.
yeah, I mean, that makes good sense to me, just that we'll break for lunch now, give your kids a wee bit of time to download, and when we come back, we will just look at the, just work through the pages of the general policy and consider changes, alterations to wording or whatever as we work through these final pages of the policy direction. Are you all comfortable with that? That makes sense to everybody? Okay, so I know it's a few minutes early, but I think to start on this it doesn't seem to make good sense to me. So perhaps if we break for lunch at 12:23, but if we're here ready to go again at 1 o'clock or just before 1 o'clock, that would be really helpful. Thank you. So we will adjourn for lunch. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Tom. So, we've done some really good work this morning, thank you, and we have completed the suite of our community's aspirations as far as what's in, what's out of the reserve management plan process, and taken into account all of what our community's told us and what we consider, you know, added our weightings to that information and considered our way forward, set it up, I guess, for the next 10 years. So that's great. So as we discussed just prior to lunch, if we perhaps refer to the submission folder, but refer to the folder that's got the draft reserve management plan introduction. And if we just go through page by page, I'm sure you've all read that and you've probably got some. Yep. So we're looking at this document starting here. Yep. So this will take us through the overarching and the general policies around that. And we won't really need the submissions from here. We're sort of done with that.
Yes,
we do. We do. Yes. Oh, yes, of course we do. Sorry.
Got some general ones and-
Yeah. Sorry, my fault. Rightio. We'll come back to this and we'll look at page, what's actually page 2 and page 3, looking at the introduction.
Right, so
So
just the
I'm
only
going to
thing-
leave it with you now, Judith.
Right. So the only thing I just want to, just to point out that this reserve management plan covers all the reserves except the Hammer Springs Thermal Reserve and the Queen Mary Hospital Historic Reserve, which have their own reserve management plans. And there's a separate process. I mean, they will need to be reviewed as well, but yes, they'll be reviewed in a separate process. But just that point. And then if we jump to page 7, and if you're looking at the Health New Zealand submission, here is some comment, a comment. So at the bottom of page 7 in the first column, Ngā Tahu and the Hurunui district. There's a correction there reflected by the numerous, it says Po, but it should be Pa.
Yeah.
And I'm sure. Yeah, so that's come through from there. So the next one is climate change. And John Priest has questioned how reserves can contribute to the positive effects of climate change. And also the Health New Zealand has talked about climate change. And I'm aware that Councillor Armstrong wants to raise some things about climate change as well. So, about you.
Yeah, okay, thanks very much. So I just touched on this earlier, the June 25 council agenda, we approved or accepted the Canterbury Climate Partnerships Plan actions. And I guess I was reflecting on, for instance, John Priest's submissions and felt that we do, as we're realising, own council owns quite a bit of land across the district. If you look at all the different reserves we've got and so on, and that this is an opportunity for us to show some leadership around that, I guess in the context of native planting in particular, to contribute to Indigenous biodiversity establishment or re-establishment or whatever. And so I've also heard comments here about, you know, the local communities need to have some input into that, obviously through the local committees and so on. But I wondered if we could or should consider having some principles in here that could guide where communities are wanting to do some planting, could guide the kind of planting that we're doing, and that we also could have a principle perhaps around thinking about corridors, you know, where we've got reserves that kind of almost contiguous in their boundaries and so on, that might be an opportunity for us to also give some actual effect to this commitment we've made. So yeah, I was just looking to see if there would be some support for some principles to help make real that commitment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And alongside that, I agree that we have an opportunity and I agree with Karen, and in fact, we were just talking about this type of thing. But I also think we have to be aware of costs, so if we can put in some enabling principles, and then really you're looking to communities, etc., to take some ownership of it, but setting it up in such a way that it can be intergenerational, so it's not just reliant on a couple of people. But I do think that we have an opportunity, and I'm happy to look at putting in some guiding principles as long as it doesn't absolutely commit people to having to do it and having a potential cost blowout. So just finding that balance for me.
Yeah, I agree. It was something that I thought about when I read it actually as well, Karen, that, you know, given the Canterbury wide, you know, whilst we've got to be specific to Hironu, I thought some connection with that is what I was sort of looking for in this narrative, notwithstanding, you know, a binding agreement, but yeah, I thought there probably does need to be some relationship with that other document in this as a context. So I haven't got any words around that, but it was something that I was, well, maybe put a line on that one. Yeah.
Just a question, New Chair, are there some guiding principles or enabling principles within the climate change adaptive plan itself that could be transported easily into the reserves management plan, or is it something that we would want to look at developing ourselves that are unique to the Hironu district?
I think there probably is some, can't remember, should have pulled that document, but I think there probably is some guidance. Yeah, but I don't want us to get too bound up. But I think there are some guiding principles that we could insert into this to give some sort of direction. That's, yeah.
And then a supplement question would be, is there anything that we could take from the Birdsong project or initiative that's happening within the district as well, rather than reinvent the wheel potentially, like there may be something.
I mean, maybe it could be cited as an example.
Yeah.
You know, for example, and put that in as overarching, so that if someone was to read this and consider how, they might look for some other connections to how that could be applied, or who might help apply that, or whatever. I don't want us to get too bound up, but I think there is a relationship. That'd be my thinking. Do I get general support around the room? Does that sort of make sense? Robbie and then Karen?
Yeah, agree. I just had a thought around, yeah, what you're talking about, Karen, is life forms above the ground, isn't it? Birds and all the rest of it. When we do riparian planting, all that around the rivers and that, it's more around the river, isn't it, I think? Because there, put somewhere in there that there's consideration of the riparian planting for the bird corridors, or yeah, like a two birds with one stone sort of thing, or doing two different plantings for two different jobs.
Do you think we need to keep our sights on this introduction of just a wee bit higher? Because that's probably where the general guidance will come from, in my thinking.
Yeah, so it might be where planting is contemplated, you know, consideration priority might be given to Indigenous wildlife planting, in keeping with this nature-based solutions section of this report. You know, because some of them are grazed and so they're not going to work, aren't they?
I think I mean, it's nature-based, and I think that wording isn't exclusive to Indigenous biology.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be.
No, just nature-based. So I think that that may be more appropriate in the next section.
Yeah, so I was thinking.
So it's really around maybe it's taking those principles in the climate change partnership and making them at a higher level to fit where appropriate to fit within the reserve management plan. So we can do some.
I'm happy. Because I mean, when I read the ecosystems and the biodiversity paragraph or 2 or 3, that kind of felt still relatively fit for purpose. So we just don't want to bind ourselves up in something in these overarching policies that are gonna tangle us and. Happy to move forward?
Yep.
Thank you.
The next change I've got is, so it's, the heading is walking and cycling strategy. But that was going to be called the walking and riding strategy. Andrew is now working on bringing this back to life. And brief conversation yesterday was maybe it should be the walking, cycling and riding strategy. So that will come back to council. There's just a project plan being developed. I'm not quite sure how we will deal with that in this. I think it would be safer to call it the walking, cycling and riding strategy.
Right. So this is obviously going to be a little bit of work in progress, really, and it will come back into this.
Yes, I think by the time, sorry, through you, Nadia, I think by the time this comes back, this reserve management plan comes back to council, there will have already been some discussions around the walking and cycling, riding, walking, cycling and riding strategy.
Yeah, okay. So we expect this in the next couple of months and then likely to get this back in sort of 3 months' time. So that'll be
quicker than that.
Well, okay. Get them ballpark. Radio.
Okay. So I haven't got anything more in that introduction section.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
Question, and I just raised this from, I think it was, let me just find out. I think it might have been from Mr. Priest's submission on page 4. You know, we've got the planning context, and we've got that list of strategies, plans, policies, bylaws that influence and impact reserve planning. I know he wondered whether, and I'm just looking for direction, I'm just throwing this out here, whether we needed to have some mention there to the NPS for fresh water or the NZ biodiversity strategy, or are we getting too hooked up there? Because, and I guess that's reflective of a number of the issues that he's raised within his submission. Because we have got the biodiversity strategy for the Canterbury region, but we don't refer to the New Zealand biodiversity strategy.
Sorry, I was distracted.
Oh, no, so my advice on that would be just to stick to the council strategies and remove the biodiversity strategy for the Canterbury region. That's
and you wouldn't consider the NPS in there either?
Well, I guess my thoughts on that, or would we, where would we stop and start?
Yeah, that's what I'm just raising it.
All the NPSs and all the NESs.
Just because it did form part of the submissions, and I think, you know, we owe it to our submitters to.
So we could make a general comment about national direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would cover that. And the other thing that he mentioned in there was whether in that planning context we should be mentioning the Treaty of Waitangi.
It's got its own section further on, I think.
Yeah, it has. But I think he was questioning whether or not it should actually be part of that particular list. Because it does have its own section somewhere.
Speak up. Sorry. So it doesn't have a specific section itself. The treaty is mentioned under the aims and objectives.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like if we're mentioning national direction, maybe it fits in there. I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out for, just aware that he raised that in his oral submission. And then there was, maybe we're not there yet. Lost the place.
can we just carry on and then if you pick it up,
Yeah.
you can come back, so if we're looking at page 10, I think. I think that's where you got to.
Yes, so I just note, under subdivision, that first paragraph needs updating.
Be more current,
Yes.
yeah, so you'll,
So we'll make
that, yeah,
We'll make that change.
yeah. If I can just look at these two pages, future improvement, and it's really under page 11, where showing the Glenmark also the Eastwood Max Reserve land within the towns and greatly benefit. So I guess that still is the status quo, that it would additional reserve land for, I kind of wasn't quite sure what that statement was really referring to, or is it fact, or is it looking to future-proof having reserve land in our villages in the Eastwood, particularly Glenmark. So I didn't really, I was a wee bit confused about what Rick was trying to portray.
I have to agree, because I don't know that, at least they were looking at potential expansion. I know at one stage there was another development that was looking to go further outside the town and that type of thing. I think we're reasonably well served with recreation opportunities sort of in Waipara and
Well, even Greta Valley.
Greta Valley is,
Wasn't there?
yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, so I didn't know what it was referring to when I put a question mark beside it, because I didn't know if it was my read or whether it was.
No,
I was misreading it.
I tend to agree. I don't know why it was put in this place, but
yeah.
Could
So
be.
can we have a wee look at that maybe? Yes. Yep. Is there anything else on page 10 or 11?
Sorry, can I go back? Sorry, I found what I was looking for, and again, I'm just gonna ask this as a question. On page 3, under plan review, I just made a note that when Kevin Roach submitted, he made some particular points around the implementation and review process and how important it was that it's a living document. And so I read there that it will be subject to ongoing review. And I just wondered, like, how does that look? Because he suggested, or he asked the question, you know, could a board or community committee somehow do an annual look over with the understanding that, you know, there wouldn't be any significant departures? I might be delving too deep here, but I'm just trying to encapsulate the submissions into the general.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think it's two points here. One is that I think his point was that we adopt this reserve management plan, particularly with the specific policies and the future policies, and then no one kind of ever looks at it again. And I think he was suggesting an annual review of those policies to make sure that what we've said we're going to do, even though the policies, that's carried on. In terms of the plan, and we've done some reviews, so Coppard Reserve was changed to reflect it was vested, and then it was changed again when the community wanted to develop it a bit more. So there is an opportunity to change reserves. There's another one in Hammer Springs that was changed because the policies weren't quite right. So there's that opportunity to review, just has to go through the special consultative procedure.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm questioning is it says it will be subject to ongoing review. So I understand the process of, you know, a particular reserve needs reviewing, but what I'm asking is in relation to his submission, how do we ensure the ongoing review?
Well, that's my first point, that's up to the committees who have delegation to look at the policies and review them and make sure that you're following what the policies say. I think that's his point, that so the whole plan needs review, but the actions need to be reviewed.
Yeah, so what's the process for that happening at each community board or community committee then? Because it hasn't in the past, well, in my tenure anyway, until this process, unless there's been one of those special circumstances like the example you gave with Coppard Reserve.
Well, Madam Mayor, what do you want that process to be?
Well, I don't know, that's why I'm just raising it because, yeah.
I think we probably need to just leave it to work so that if an issue arises and it's not fit for purpose, using Coppard as an example, that our knowledge now to know that you can be influential to make that change inside this 10-year process now. I think I probably just coming back to the fact that if we tie ourselves up with too much technicality here, we're buying in that every community committee actually has to do that review on a regular basis, whatever regular means.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, then we've failed in that technique. So, I think we need to cast our eyes across the process. Know that if there needs to be a change to a specific reserve, that it can be done internally within the process. So maybe it's the knowledge gain from the question that you've asked, Pauline, as opposed to
that's right,
principally changing the document and the structure of actually how this is going to happen, because we know the work laid under the strategy and policy committee, that actually if we add a whole bunch of other things under it, we're not going to be able to get to that anyway within a 1 year period or 3 year period. So I think we need to be careful what we wish for. So I'm comfortable to leave that there. Do I have support with that?
It's actually under requirement under section 41(4) that the council, what's the wording, right? That the administering body of any reserve shall keep the management plan under continuous review so that, subject to subsection 3, the plan is adapted to changing circumstances or in accordance with increased knowledge.
So I would suggest that we perhaps haven't given effect to that. And we just need to make sure we do, and that's the knowledge that comes from this process, as you said. Yeah.
So we're happy to leave that there?
Yeah. I was just going to suggest, community committees are on a 3 year cycle. It seems sensible to me to have once in that 3 year cycle that each committee dusts them off and checks them out and refreshes their memory on what they're meant to be doing and just updates stuff. Or even in an induction process to a new committee, so that when that actually we give them the knowledge, we give them the power, we give them the tools, and then they follow that through as they need to. I just don't want to get us too complicated here. We haven't been that far off the button in the last 10 years, so I just don't think we need to tie things up. Can we keep going? I've got a completely different thing now.
Okay, so are we going back to?
We're going on to page 4, 7 even. Now, part of the Hillary district, and I just wanted to draw councillors' attention to page number, I think it's 233 in our other folder. The submission to Whakaora has put in, saying yes, they applaud kind of what we've got in there, which is that we certainly need to be working with local mana whenua around the sites of significance to them, but they said that they would encourage us to have an early and meaningful engagement with mana whenua on reserves management to reflect council's commitment to Te Tiriti o Waitangi and show respect to mana whenua. So I guess they're saying that that's the physical sites of significance, if you like, but actually we should be talking to them in general and honouring the principles of the treaty, which comes back to the point you made. I've looked through all the rest of this, and that's the only reference I can find to our relationship with Makahu, with mana whenua, and I think it should go in there. I think we should be more proactive than just talk to them about the sites of significance and how they want them managed. I think we have some obligations to have a proactive discussion with them about our reserve management plan generally as well.
So through you, Chair, there's something just under the aims and objectives, and I'm just wondering whether this addresses
Yes,
So
so
it's
or not,
something-
so yeah, so under, so this is page 12.
Yeah.
And it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th point down under aims, where it says provide opportunities for our communities to contribute in the management of reserve land, taking into account the principles of, and we'll change that to Tiriti o Waitangi, but that may not be enough. There may be something else that we can add under the.
Yes, for me, that's not quite the same and not quite enough, because I think what Te Whare Ora are challenging us about, and I think are saying that other councils do this, to have a proactive conversation, and for us, I guess that's both Ngāti Kuri and our southern folk as well, so that we actually say we are reserved, you know, we want to talk to you in principle about our reserves and our obligations under the Treaty of Waitangi, and we want to make sure that you're feeling as if you can have any input generally to this process, as well as to the sites of significance. I don't know if councillors are comfortable with that, but I think that's what Te Whatu Ora is asking us to do, and I would be comfortable if we did do that.
Thanks, Gary.
Madam Chair, I understand the submission. I've read the submission as well. And I acknowledge their point, but I don't agree with it, and I would not be suggesting we go that far.
Robin?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same camp. I absolutely got my head around significant areas and things like that, points of interest. But the rest of it, I think at what point, when you're asking everybody, the whole community for their thoughts, that's not excluding anybody in us, but we have channeling.
I'll come to you, Pauline. I'm comfortable with the way it's written on the
And that's where that's where my comfort sits.
That's where, yeah. So Pauline, you had a comment, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, just because I had written this down at the end of the last meeting. So I'm just going to throw this out as a question that I think is linked. In regards to treaty partners, given that both our Ngāti Kuri and Ngā Tuhariri aren't actually within the Hiranui district, have we, or how have we actually pushed this plan out to them? So has that happened?
So they were contacted by email.
Cool, excellent.
Provided with like the process that we were going to follow, and
Fantastic.
there was an opportunity for both parties to provide any input should they choose to.
Thank you for that clarification. I can take that one.
And that's what I come back to, sitting in that aims and objectives, you know, that I think there is totally support to Gary's words. So, anybody else? Are we happy to move on?
Sorry, just while we're talking about Te Tiriti or the treaty, it sounds like, Maria, you've picked up on page 5 of the Te Whatu Ora submission, and and changing the words from Treaty of Waitangi to Te Tiriti, but also in there I note that they made that statement around the principles and the change to those principles, so that we're not using those principles, but rather, actually no, don't worry. So we don't specify them, so it doesn't matter. Like that.
Let's keep ourselves focused and think about the document as we read it. It has our needs, and we are refining that to further meet our needs, but we don't want to get ourselves tied up in knots. Vanessa?
A very quick question of clarification. Are we changing the current terminology, or are we keeping it to the Treaty of Waitangi? Can someone confirm that, please?
The recommendation is we change it to Te Tiriti o Waitangi.
I mean, I guess it says the same thing.
It doesn't,
Yeah.
and it's contentious and it's ambiguous,
Yeah, I know.
so I'm not
Yeah.
comfortable with that.
I'm looking for guidance then. Are we looking at the words on, all on the same page on page 12? Is that what we're talking about? It talks about
where it refers to the treaty.
where it refers to the Treaty of Waitangi.
Can I ask a simple question? Do the two, forgive my ignorance, I'll admit to it right up front. Do the two mean the same, or is there a difference in meaning or intent?
Yes and yes, no and yes.
If that's the case, I would stay with the status quo. Unless we want to have a workshop on what the two meanings are and what it means to us as
What it means
council.
to us, yeah.
I'll support that.
Yeah.
Just because we're also representing the district, so if we're going to go there, we need to take them on the journey.
Absolutely.
So.
Do you want to give any guidance, Judith or Hamish?
I couldn't explain the difference between Te Tiriti o Waitangi and Treaty of Waitangi, so I'm of no help to you.
Leave it as
Leave it as it is.
Leave it as.
Leave it as it is and,
Sorry, Karen.
yeah.
Well, I just wondered if councillors would be comfortable if we had Te Tiriti o Waitangi in brackets after the Treaty of Waitangi.
Then if we hear
So
it
both.
means different things.
Yes,
Are we
because
out?
my understanding is that Te Tiriti o Waitangi is that obviously is a Māori phrase for it, but for me, that very much speaks to the Māori, not the English translation that we use, but the Māori words. And I believe that the words and the intent of the words is interpreted differently by different groups. And so I think it's really important to Māori to use that phrase because that reflects their understandings of what the treaty was about. And I say that because I've been to courses on the treaty and I recognise I live in Hiranui and that understanding may not be generally known, but I'm advocating for that. So I wonder if we could compromise by having the Māori phrase in brackets if people would be comfortable with that on that basis.
On the table?
Yeah, just for clarification, I mean, this is a living document, is it not? And we've got some time yet before it's finalised, just, yes. If there's not general agreement or understanding around the table, maybe I would stick with what we've got. Maybe we've got time to get some more information about that rather than say yay or nay today. But I'm comfortable that we haven't closed out that opportunity to add something like that at a later stage when there's greater understanding. I would leave it as at the moment.
I totally agree.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I was going to answer a question with a question. What does the local government need? Does it say that we need to give effect to the treaty or Te Tiriti or both? Because that's what we should be following.
I'm not in a position to answer any of
Let's
these questions.
move on.
So I
We
think
can check that.
Absolutely move on.
All right, sorry if I didn't get down the rest of the room. Radio.
Okay, public access and use. So 1.4. And this is just where practicable, council will endeavour to cater for persons with a disability in its design of reserve access and facilities. And the Health New Zealand is recommend that we use the Parks tool 8. Parks tool, not 8. Which I have no knowledge of. And then accessibility of reserves. We've got a general policy that we cater for persons with a disability.
So that's surely meeting our expectation, is it?
Yeah,
not?
it's just
that, you know. I'm really comfortable.
Vehicle access and parking. Suggest the council encourages the use of active transport, public transport, carpool for travelling to reserves, creating walking and cycling infrastructure, limiting the cars travelling to reserves, it might be a little bit more practical in a an urban area.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Comment by themselves without knowledge of the background of the Hurunui.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I have got lines on this because I just thought
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense.
just to
Yeah.
confuse them just a little bit more. Paula also raised a point on this, but it was more around why we were changing the Beach Coastal Reserve lookout to local purpose Esplanade access way. And then she thought that that was, so we were going to close access to the public. But it was explained that it was to allow the run to roll back. So just need to point out that she did raise it as a point as well. Right, where are we now? Right, furniture and facilities. And you added a bullet point about accessibility.
I'll just pop back a page actually, Judith, if I may, page 14, under community organisations, 4.1, talks about play centres, kahangareo and kindergartens will be located. Actually, we don't have any kindergartens and unlikely to ever have a kindergarten in our district, so I think we could delete that word out of that, out of that phrase.
Okay.
Sorry, we'll move on, page 15.
So okay about adding a bullet point about accessibility for walkways?
Yep, that makes sense. What do you guys?
So can I just go back a page as well? Judith, you've probably picked this up, but just in case, page 11 at the very top, where it talks about the start has been made to the development of the Southwood Spatial Plan.
Yeah.
Just an adjustment there.
Yeah.
So I just wondered, sorry, maybe on page 13, leases and licenses, that discussion we had before, which I thought was very useful about the process we're going to follow to, consult or link in with local groups that kind of oversee these, whether we need to say in there that there will be liaison or contact or input or something with those local groups in the context of signing a license to occupy or release. I think it'd be quite good to put it in there. And then those groups know that, it's just a kind of a double check to officers to just check in with local folk about those plans and so on. I don't know if it's formally in Glenda's policy, but it sounded like very good practice, and I thought it'd be quite good if it was reflected in here.
Is this procedure as a policy?
It's not override current policy at the moment. I know we had an issue, I had questions around development of the BMX track with regards to a license to occupy, and was told by an officer that it didn't actually have to come through Southall, that it actually could be dealt with directly at management level.
Okay.
I'm just asking because I'm not actually, I sort of see where you're going, Karen, and I actually don't disagree, but I'm just trying to clarify in my own mind what process currently is with that.
Or does it depend on what the status of the reserve is? As to where it goes, I don't know.
So are we by including a policy setting, I guess, for staff to follow, and here is that going to add value or?
I think we need to review that section.
Yeah.
As part of the look at the leasing of property policy.
Okay.
And maybe has got actually way too specific for a policy when we've already got a leasing of property policy.
Yeah.
Because what we risk is that we conflict the wording here with the leasing of property policy.
Yeah, okay.
So it's better to have one policy and
Just refer to it, yeah. Good stuff.
Do you wanna jump to the tree issue, or do you wanna carry on and deal with that later?
Oh, have you got something you want to add?
So I just had a quick look, so number one, the Reserve Act makes no mention of the treaty at all, which probably isn't surprising. The Local Government Act refers to the Treaty of Waitangi, doesn't refer to Te Tariki o Waitangi at all. That's not so, of course, you couldn't refer to it if you chose to, but that's the requirement under the Local Government Act.
Okay, thank you for that. Does that give us some clarity and perhaps some comfort that as it's written is still fit for purpose and not incongruent with anything other than what we know? Okay.
Excellent.
Just wanted to sort of add that currently, that unfortunately, the treaty is not recognised by law, and so our position has to be follow that the Local Government Act for that reason mainly.
So status quo. Thank you. Good discussion. Thank you. Right, let's move on.
Right, so adding accessibility on page 15. Yep.
Yeah.
And then adding accessibility on page 16 for play equipment.
Can I just clarify, when we're adding accessibility to play equipment, you have to add some that are accessible to all, or all that are accessible to all, if we're looking at accessibility issues?
I think the purpose of it is that when we're redeveloping or adding on or building a new playground, we take into account accessibility. So if I think about Tom, know about this, the Henry Springs new playground at Brook Dawson has an area that will be accessible, but not the whole playground.
Thank you.
And the community board have also raised accessibility as an issue for the Chisholm. What's that? Chisholm Park, is it? No, Chisholm. Tom?
He's nodding.
Oh, he's nodding. Thumbs up. Yeah. Is an important issue. So it's having some equipment.
Fantastic.
And I think we talk about accessibility in a very broad sense as well. So yeah.
And particularly with an aging population and that type of thing, sometimes it's the surfaces you use as much as equipment. So I fully support that end.
Let's move on.
Right, and then again at page 17, adding just making sure that picnic tables, seating, barbecue sites and reserves takes into consideration accessibility. Yep. So that's just an addition there. Same for toilet facilities, just ensuring that they're accessible. On the building act that's accessible, but refer to it there. Now, natural values. This is where tucked away in here is the 60%. Just saw it, 19.3. Yeah. Wherever possible, in accordance with the MPS on Indigenous biodiversity, and where conditions allow, at least 60% of plants are to be Indigenous to the district.
Are you
comfortable with that?
Look, I am. I haven't said much, but I am, because it says wherever possible, so that gives you an out, and where conditions allow. So, boom, job done. Move on.
Erin, a comment?
Sorry, I was waving my hand and should have spoken up ahead, so I just want to go back to page 17, advertising signage on club rooms. It's got sponsors shall be allowed to advertise, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sorry, I don't know which policy this came from. I thought it might have been Te Whatuora, but they were talking about restricting alcohol, tobacco and unhealthy food advertisements. And I guess that could be tricky depending on who the sponsors are. Do we have a view on that? We should duck their hips.
Good question.
Great question.
So that the external facing. You know. I can't think of any signage that would have any attachment to any sponsor like that at the moment, but
That's
that's
cool.
cool.
And do we-
In the future.
Yeah, do we want to put something in to not allow that, or what's our view on it?
Just, sorry, Madam
Yeah.
Mayor, given the number of, a variety of groups and organisations that use our reserves, I think we're going to have a conversation about what advertising we allow on it, like AMP shows and all of those sorts of things, whether it's permanent or temporary, is a bigger conversation that could likely be added in at some stage, and if we haven't put a lot of thought into it, I'm quite happy to bring back if officers, because this is not a final reading, to bring back something if it's something we should look at, but
Because I think we
it
need
needs a bit of
to
thought.
consider external or internal on reserve, you know, if it's the.
Fish and chip shop on the road outside the reserve, or
Yeah.
Oh, well, on the next
Probably-
page, it goes, it's 3 types: advertising signage on club rooms, atmosphere advertising signage,
Temporary.
car parks, and then temporary advertising.
I was just going to say, I really like the statement in there in point B, where it says the size, sighting and design of the advertising on selected structures is to be at the discretion of council officers. Because I think we trust our council officers to ensure that we don't have anything inappropriate. And then on temporary advertising, a plan has to be approved by council officers.
Are we thinking that it's still relatively current, or are we looking to future proof this, and we're looking, that's the question. Or do we need to get a bit more work done on this to understand the implications and the appropriateness of the reword?
Maybe it needs a little bit more work, Madam Mayor,
Yeah.
because whilst it might not be an issue today, there's nothing saying that a rugby club or any one of our venues may sign a great sponsorship with a brewery company who already advertises on television, you know, at 4% or less, or whatever the advertising rules are. And if that sponsor signs up with a rugby club, they have every right, as part of that contract, to have a sign. Is it inside or outside? I
Yeah.
don't know.
No.
I think it needs a bit more
Yeah,
work.
I'm tending to agree actually, because when you start thinking about unintended consequences, we don't want to tie ourselves up with something that's actually going to be an effect, negative effect in a document like this. Yeah. So we're probably looking for a bit more work around that one.
Yeah,
But Robbie?
I need a bit more direction, sorry.
Yeah.
A bit more, I know, I need to do a bit more work. but
Yeah.
What is that bit more work?
Yeah, I don't know.
Are you wanting to enable alcohol signage?
Sorry, through the
Yeah.
chair, consistent with what is already available in the public space. If a brewery can run an ad on TV for a 4% beer, then we should allow their sign on a reserve, and particularly, and then again, in relation to that, what do other councils do? Will a brewery be able to have a sign at the new stadium in Christchurch? Whatever the general practice is, my view is we should be consistent with it. No cigarette advertising, no vape advertising, that's all a no-no. But in terms of alcohol, we need to be consistent with the practices of our country, as opposed to trying to take a leading role, which might be out of step, because that might disadvantage our hardworking rugby clubs and all the rest of it.
So with that, I'll come to you, Robbie, but so with that in mind, with that, you know, I guess that thinking, from what you've just described, it makes me wonder whether we keep the wording as, if I say nondescript is what it is, that actually doesn't tie us up, and if issues do arise, well, we now know that we can change because we've got new knowledge of reviewing it or whatever, but perhaps now's not the time to actually be, you know, and throwing some wording that actually might bind us to something that we didn't intend. Robbie and then Pauline.
Yeah, I was just thinking that we're almost coming to look through a double sense with two different lenses. You know, we think of alcohol, we think, yeah, a brewery, and we think of, well, you know, a new bottle store in the town or something. But just up the road, we're in a winery area, and we don't quite see a winery as the same. And if a winery was to advertise a big concert venue or something, was the Whiteborough Lions Arena or something, it's like, what's the difference? So that's what I say, agree, more work needed to be done.
Or leave the wording as status quo until we considered what we might be wanting to achieve out of rewording a document like this and review the model at that point. I don't know. Did you have your hand up, Pauline, I think, and then Karen?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't want to tie us in without thinking about unintended consequences, but in the same breath, I'll say, I also don't want to be in a situation where a club signs a sponsorship deal and the advertising goes up and then we say, hey, hang on a minute, we can't have this. So, yeah.
For me, that we've already got, and they commend us for it, in fact, on page 237, paragraph 31, we've got a smoke-free strategy. So if we said no, to be consistent with that, there should be no tobacco or vaping products advertised on our reserves, because we don't want people to smoke or vape on our reserves. Then that would address, you know, a chunk of it, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And for me, I guess I was asking what our position might be, because I, like you, Gary, I was thinking you get very much that real reaction against we shouldn't have breweries sponsoring rugby teams, but we do, and I'm thinking about from a tourism point of view as well. We certainly have a lot of wineries, and we want to support them. And you know, the new owners down the road, I think, are calling their place the Whiteborough Winehouse. So you know, it's a tricky path to walk down, really, isn't it? And part of the idea is to have events and to have, you know, responsible purchase and consumption of alcohol as part of that event. And we know that we've done the policy around that. So we've kind of got pieces that give guidance, but we haven't got anything that says specifically what should happen in our reserves.
If we identified, probably go down the path of all reserves and not having alcohol on the reserves as well. So, you know, we need to be cautious about that. I'm thinking about show day. Yeah.
I'm just I'm thinking about in terms of current practice.
That's right.
The Amberley ANP show, I'm sure there's beers being served somewhere. There is certainly wine tasting going on as part of the promotion of the show. Now, I don't know whether any of those supporting companies put up advertising, but are they allowed to? Do they have to have prior approval? Is it vetted or is it a no-no? Sorry, Hamish.
So, Madam Mayor, I'll just point you to the alcohol advertising and promotion code, which is the standard that any alcohol advertising has to meet. So my view would be that we could refer to that document if we wish, but there's no need to reinvent the wheel on this. There is a code and it's mandatory. We can't depart from that code in any circumstance. I mean, I wonder whether it's even worthwhile mentioning, because it's simply that's what's mandatory, and anybody that breaches it is breaching the code. And they suffer the consequences.
I think that's really good. Yeah. So you should have spoken up earlier.
I'm looking online, I didn't know about the stuff, I'm just having a quick look, but
look, I think we've actually
teased the Advertising Standards Authority.
I think that means that we're going to leave the wording as almost like status quo, and we've increased our awareness of actually what other codes might govern. Right, we're going to move on. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, we had just started on the trees section, and I feel like we've had one comment and gone off somewhere else, and I just want to make sure that we've had some conversation with it. I had a question, because we've just reviewed the tree management policy, or it's yet to be reviewed? Clarification on that we're referring to in this other policy.
Madam Mayor, it's not on the current schedule of review.
Okay, so that answers that question, because we're referring to it, and we know that we've got some issues that have got to be sorted out in this tree management as well. So if we refer to that in this document, when this one's updated, it will just automatically update in here. And yeah, I just want to make sure they're in sync, because we know that we have some issues in this other tree document.
Yep. And we've discussed the 60%, and we're taking Ross's direction that we understand that. So I think that we are ready to move on to perhaps the next page now. Judith? Thank you. Which is page 19.
Nothing on there.
Just I have to say it. Is that so restrictive that if we came to replace trees at Cheviot Hills or in parts of Hanmer Springs, whatever, where there are notable historic heritage plantings of exotic trees, that we are committed to 60% in Indigenous? Should there be a clause in there which says 60% in accordance with national policy, and where conditions allow at least 60% of the plants are to be Indigenous to the district unless other special circumstances apply, or words to that effect? Should we have an out clause?
I think we should, to be fair.
I agree.
If all the trees on Amurie Ave blew down in one hang of a storm, I know it's not on council reserve, it's on roadside, but we would want to be replacing them probably with the existing trees. I'm just raising whether or not we need a safety valve for ourselves, should we ever need it.
So you've got that wording, Judith? Because I think there's general acceptance from around this table.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm sorry to slow things down.
No, that's cool. We're almost on the last few pages. And I'm sure Tom would agree with you on that statement as well, the example you used. So yeah, that's cool. Thanks, Judith.
I'm kind of loath to go forward every time I go forward, I guess.
Okay. Same.
Chin up.
Anyway,
come on, chin up. You were good.
Chin up, sorry.
We're on page 19, yeah.
No, 19. Oh, blimey. Okay.
That's what I reckon.
Righto. I got nothing on there.
I said it's an easy one. We're on page 20. Just will turn over quickly.
So the addition under policy 24 to add in so we've got consultation with Heritage New Zealand and with Tangata Whenua and Mana Whenua. Got here consultation nota 238. Encourage council to set up a council okay, right. Not worry about that. We'll capture that and nothing more.
We were just sharing because the online version is missing a page.
From 23 to 26.
So the last 3 pages of talking, finishing on page 22. Is that correct? Right, well, so we've been through all of the submissions.
Just got a few bits and must.
Yep, and we've done all the specific reserves. So if you take us through the exceptions, I guess you're relating us now back to the agenda, Maria, is that where we need to be looking?
So that will have the submissions, won't it? It's just looking at specific submissions. So
yeah, okay.
Submissions.
Yeah.
But you will still need the draft reserves management plan as well. Potentially for some of them, there's, to be fair, a few of these items that have been raised, there's no reserve, there's no policy in that they're related to. It's just other matters.
So I guess if you can just kind of walk us through this.
Yep.
And we'll- yeah.
Okay, so the first one is the Mark Coulthard, John Manson, Paul Anglia Beach Residents Ratepayers Association. So it's submission page number 28. And this is about developing a sort of memorandum of understanding with the Anglia Beach residents regarding the, it talks about here, the increased levy to assist servicing the bund. So I'll read it out and then so we appreciate the support shown to ABRRAC with the renewal of the ECAN consent for the beach fund to be rebuilt, together with access to funding. The community increased their levy to assist in servicing this. It will be reviewed annually, but in light of the CAP process, the additional rating to have the managed retreat option purchased and land bank must be kept in mind. Each property will already have the standard HDC overall rate increases. It is likely insurance costs will increase. Many owners have limited income. A memorandum of understanding would go some way to provide assurance to the community of the ongoing commitment to the community residents.
So I guess this has come through this process, but in many ways it was perhaps an LTP process as well. Would be my read, you know, I mean, you guys are, you know, on top of that as local residents, but I think it feels to me as if it's an LTP process and the increased funding for the bund and that they're looking for a memorandum to go is to manage that process. So I'm not, but if that's the memorandum to manage the bund process as opposed to the reserve management process.
Have you been involved in any conversation about an MOU?
Yes, it's been an ongoing conversation for about 3 or 4 years now. Our original position was we don't own the bund, so why would we undertake to maintain it? We didn't get maintain it. We had no say over how it was maintained. But what we tried to devise is an MOU that set out the types of maintenance that might be required and how it might work. And it stalled for a long time, and I'm not sure where it's at currently. But it's a completely separate issue than the reserves plan. It's an operational matter, and I think it should be just dealt with as such.
Yeah, that's what it feels like to me, and I'm getting some nods around the room. I think that feels that, you know, there is just a bit of a crossover of submission process. So are we happy to leave that, or have you got something else you want to add?
Yeah, I am happy to leave it, and I do agree it is kind of a separate process. And I think the reason that it's come up here is because we're talking about a structure that's not owned by council, but is on kind of reserve land. And so I'm happy to leave it here, but I know that community are looking for some understanding as to how things might be managed in the future, and I guess the personal risk that it's felt might be falling on certain members of the community down there. So if we can have a pathway to deal with that somewhere else, that would be good.
So I guess it'll be picked up in the minutes, and that might be the pathway for that to happen as well.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. We'll move on.
And these may be all matters outside of the reserve management plan. But anyway, I'm raising them because they were specific submission points
so
through the reserves
hand
management
on
plan
heart, we can
process.
go to community and say
So the next one is on page 31, which is Marion and Murray Herman, and their concern was about excessive spending around the Amberley Eastern Reserve. So they're looking at reduce speeds, specifically around Double Corner Road, Fantail Avenue and Kingfisher Avenue.
So I guess that should be directed, I mean, if we're looking at directions out of this process into another process, it could, or should be directed to road safety and the speed management process that's within here somewhere. Does that make sense?
Yes, to me, Madam
Yeah.
Chair, this isn't a reserve issue, it's
Yeah.
a speed management issue, we have a process
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
setting speed limits.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and I think probably that one should be just directed to officers, not to the operations or road safety committees. So
Right.
just direct to officers for a start.
Okay. Because they might bring that through, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, they'll have a look at it, but
Yeah.
there's certain criteria to meet before you can
Correct.
start placing limitations on speed in place, so.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't think
I'm real
anyone's
happy with that,
complicated.
you happy with that,
Absolutely.
everybody happy? Yeah.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just within that same submission, the question of the position of the water tanks, the Eastern Reserve came up, and I'm trusting that there's a pathway for that through Southwood Committee appropriately. I just wanted to have that noted.
I think we had minutes in the last meeting that the delegation of Eastern Reserve would come to council. So I would imagine that that would be part of the operational context of.
So are we saying that the positioning of the water tanks will be on hold until the delegation issue is sorted?
Madam Chair, the water tanks were referred to in the minutes of the earlier discussion on these submissions in relation to Judith getting version 3 or whatever we called it of the concept drawings,
Thank you.
which would include the water tank, so the whole thing is all encompassing.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
Cool. So the next one is on page 32 and it's Tony Twino. Thank you. And this is about river water testing. So, and his request is to undertake regular water testing of the Kauai River for contamination pollutants, specifically toxic algae growth. And he's saying a lot of kids and dogs use the river in the domain in the summer months and need to know it's safe or not.
So is that not something that we give to ECAM? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a response I've put, but I just want to confirm.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure that's the right direction, thank you.
And then there was just a general comment from Kevin McDonald on page 55, and his was about requesting council to consider stalling for development projects in parks and reserves and community facility portfolios in response to the increased rates and interest rates. I don't know, thinking.
Yeah, we just respond, can we respond, are we gonna respond to everybody that replied with a general direction or? Yeah, okay, so that will be picked up in the.
The LTP process,
Yeah, that's
that's where
right.
we've made the budget calls
Yeah.
about what's in and what's not.
Yeah, that's right.
Within it, our
Yeah.
affordability.
Yeah.
And then the next two are from Alice St. Clair Stylo on behalf of Mary Collet, Alice, Chris Huey and Tom Davies. And this is to do with the Hamner Springs Village Green. And
Page 7.
sorry, page 73. And then the next one's page 74. So page 73 is about Hamner Springs Village Green. And the request to consider the green along with the Queen Mary Hospital South application for reserve status. It's currently road reserve at the moment.
Oh, okay, so what so we're talking about that little.
The village green with the banana houses.
Yeah, that's right, so the little parcel of triangle of land outside the shopping centre, the low end of the shopping centre is what we're talking about. And that's currently road reserve, so it doesn't qualify for any reserve funding. And they're looking to envelope that into the Queen Mary. How would that work with it?
So back.
So I guess that I'm be like Queen Mary, what they've asked for and what I've undertaken is that if we do some work with reserve status, seeking to get the Crown to either revoke reserves or put new reserves in place, at that same time, we'll ask the Crown to change that bit from road reserve to some sort of like purpose or recreation reserve of some sort.
Yeah.
So, it seems to me to be an efficient way to handle the issue. And, you know, I've said, yes, we'll do that.
Right.
So, I don't know why the guys need to bring it up again, but there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then the second part of that is Woodland Reserve, and this is on page 74. And then this has been done before, apparently, and so the suggestion is that DOC be approached again to transfer the ownership of the Woodland Reserve to Hiranui District Council to ensure it stays in public ownership. Is the
So
request.
I can report on that one as well. There's a number of DOC assets in that reserve, which they don't want to give away. So the council is prepared to pay for the assets, and they'll be happy for the management of the reserve. I mean, there's already an agreement regarding management of the reserve, but they'd be happy to invest the reserve in this if that was the case.
So in effect, we need to consider whether we want to purchase that.
Purchase it
Like
and
that,
those
purchase
assets and maintain them.
Yeah, okay. Right. So it's unlikely it's going to be inside the window of this LTP.
Yeah, but I mean,
With my assumption.
That may be something the
Yeah.
community will wish to consider.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, your local reserve, but
So I can get this process could go back to the community board. Yep.
And then the next one is Pounamu Higgs, and it's on page 101. And this is, again, not specifically to do with the use management plan, but it's concerns regarding off-road use of vehicles along the beaches and Waiau River, their speed and lack of driver respect. So there's concerns around safety for people and animals using the river. And the suggestion is that council could change the law to eliminate vehicles from beaches and rivers.
If I'm wrong, but I'm not sure whether that's in our within that, or to be able to change the law around that, or is that a bylaw prescription?
Through you, Chair. So there's some key points in the Northern Pegasus bylaw, and they include rules regarding vehicles on beaches. And the key points are that vehicles may only be driven on wet sand below the high tide mark, except when using an access route specified by the bylaw. Vehicles entering or leaving the beach must take the shortest, most practical route and use an existing access route. A speed limit of 30 kilometres per hour applies, except when within 50 metres of people, and where drivers must reduce speed to 10 kilometres. Driving vehicles, including motorbikes, on the dunes is not permitted. And there are also prohibited vehicle and horse access areas along the Waiau River mouth, Leithfield Beach and Kora River mouth. So we do have some mechanisms in place. I guess the question is, how often are they monitored, I suppose, or what the process is around monitoring.
So I guess that could be put through the Pecan Ranger to check in the monitoring, or?
Yeah, so Madam Mayor, I mean, it's very, very difficult because actually all of these things are not enforceable.
Yeah.
We do have a bylaw that has all these things, and we do pay for a Pecan Ranger, but the reality is that they're extremely difficult to enforce. We have got that on the work program to review the Pegasus Bay bylaw. The Waimakariri are already reviewing theirs. I see they've extended the time on it because it's got complicated. I think that is something that we need to consider when we review.
Okay.
And actually whether a bylaw is the most effective mechanism to manage. So it will come back. It's not in the immediate work program, no.
Okay.
Next year.
Yeah. You have a question, Robbie?
I was just going to say that it's similar to what Kim Roach touched on, and what you were saying, is that the work is sort of synchronised and get some consistency between us and Waimak and the Pegasus bylaw, because I think at the moment with they reviewed at different times and there's just be good to get them consistent somehow.
Yeah, well, they've already started and we haven't started yet, but yeah, certainly some alignment is, but still, it doesn't matter how well the bylaw is aligned, the monitoring for this type of behaviour is still the challenge, so yeah, anyway.
And I think first time around, Waimakere were a lot more restrictive on access than Puranui. Because there was a lot of feedback, people wanting to access the beach, so it's not very straightforward.
Yeah, okay.
Particularly when you're taking, in effect, taking people's access away.
Yeah, it's a hot topic around, well, it's not just up and down the White River, whereas, you know, people's private land, but there's the likes of the Leafield Beach and that, you know, it's, you see it comments on it all the time, so it's something to look at.
Okay, so it will get scooped up perhaps when we review in 2025. But you know, managing the issue remains a challenge to us all. Okay, Maria.
Okay, and the final one is Catherine Maxwell on pages 221 and 202. And forgive me if this is already covered, but she talks about the Brothers Scarp. So that's not specifically listed in the reserves management plan, but she's just talking about the concern along the eastern end of the Gore Bay Road, known by the locals as the Brothers. So there are a large number, approximately 100 plus mature pine trees teetering on the cliff edge. So it's a similar issue that has been raised about reserves that we do have in our reserves management plan. But again, this is about who we can either pass this on to or refer somebody to.
I don't know whether it was my own school before I got it, but I've got going to roving and ops.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we must have had a discussion around that or.
It's an ongoing issue for road.
Yeah, yeah, so I think that will be tidied up through that committee. Yeah.
Thank you.
That was it.
So I guess now it's just, are there any points that councillors have identified that we've missed?
Judith, I think that silence means that we've got a really good deep dive at the reserve management plan and listened intently well to our community and reflected some of those thoughts and processes into this, but actually if it's not this, another avenue within our council infrastructure or beyond really, so yeah, thank you.
So
great piece of work.
a little bit of where to from here. We have a number of changes to make to the document and some bits of research. Formatting, updating photos, maps and things to get to a finalised document. And then it will come back to council for adoption. The question I've got is, do you want to have a workshop prior to a council meeting to go through it page by page? Sorry. Or not?
I think we really should, because we don't. Sorry.
Oh, look, I think you know, this has taken us a long time. It's taken 3 days in effect. But actually, I think through the 3 days, we've actually truly understand what the document's about and actually how it's applied. So just judging reading the room, I'm wondering whether the councillors feel confident about, why we've got the document, and that it will, when it comes back to council, that it will have those minor changes or amendments and updated photographs and all the things that you've suggested to that. Is that going to be in September or October? Can you just remind me?
I'm not sure.
Okay,
So
but at least
Laura's
somewhere
still
there.
away, so
Yeah, okay.
it's quite a bit of work to get it tidied up. I mean, I was kind of joking on the page by page, but the report to council will highlight the changes. So that will be, I mean, it won't just be, here you go. it will point out all the changes that we've.
Tracked it through.
Yeah, well, it won't be in a
No,
track change, but it will point out the significant changes, not minor here and minor here, but, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So we'll try and in that report, highlight what we've done in response to the feedback and your comments.
Yeah. So are councillors happy that it will come back as a paper to council? You know, just, yep. So we'll take that as the next step. And that probably just comes back to the recommendation on page 28 in your agenda pack. We agreed to formally receive all submissions, which we've done, including 3 late submissions on the draft reserve management plan. Consider and deliver on all submissions received by the draft reserve management plan, and consider the removal of the local purpose reserves from the reserve management plan where there is no community use or slash function, I guess. Thank you, Fiona. You're happy to move that, and maybe with those minor amendments that we need to include that in the recommendations.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so we'll include that. So you're happy to move that. Do I have a second for that? Thank you, Ross. Is there any further comment? With that, I will put that motion, all in agreement with that, please say aye. Aye. Those against? That motion's carried. That motion's carried, sorry. Hey Maria, thanks very much. Really appreciate what you've done for us. So, you know, it's been a big piece of work, and it's great, Glenda, to have you in the room also to guide us through and understand how one relates to the other and how you'll look after that. And Judith, I know you're a good workload, but I think it's been really helpful to have you, and we've just taken our time to get through it. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Hamish and I is going to swap seats.
Swap seats
for the next.
item. Barry, you've been waiting in the corner there, I know. No, just bear with me, councillors. I text Dave to see if he heard back from him. So hang on, we've still got some work to do, guys. I'm going to move that we receive an apology from Dave for the remainder of the meeting. Do I have a second to pull that? Thank you, Gary. I'm on agreement with that, please say aye. That's carried, thank you. So we've got Tom still there, which is great. Hey Barry, it's nice to see you here. Thank you. Thank you. I think we've seen you here before either, but anyway, I'm seeing you floating around down the back there doing some good work. But we've got an interesting paper here about doing these granny flats, and you've done a bit of prep work to get us to this point. So perhaps if you just take us through the paper, and we'll check in to see if there's any questions or changes to the discussion document or the preparation of that feedback, and we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a starting point, I'll just provide a brief summation of the Making It Easier to Build Granny Flats options paper. So, as part of the National Coalition Government's wider package of work to address the housing crisis, it has released the discussion document on proposed new measures to make it easier to build granny flats, or perhaps, as they should be more correctly known, minor residential units. The policy intention is to provide more affordable housing across a broad range of people and ages. The proposal applies to compact, i.e. 60 square metre or less, detached, self-contained, single-storey dwellings, solely for residential use, where there is an existing principal residential unit established on the site and the two are held in one common ownership. Changes are proposed to both the Building Act 2004 and the Resource Management Act 1991 to enable the policy, and the likely changes will be, in terms of the Building Act, a new schedule to provide a new exemption to building consent requirements, subject to meeting certain criteria. And in regard to the Resource Management Act, a new environmental standard that will make minor residential units a permitted activity, providing they meet certain permitted activity standards. In respect of the Building Act exemption, the government is proposing certain measures to mitigate risk, and they include that the minor residential unit must be designed and built to the building code. The minor residential unit must be designed and built in accordance with certain building code acceptable solutions and not in very high and extra high wind zones, unless designed to be multi-proof or designed under the build ready schemes. All design and building work must be done or supervised by a licensed building practitioner working within the scope of their licensing class. All plumbing and drainage work must be done by a licensed person under the Building, Gas Fitters and Drain Layers Act. And in regard to the Resource Management Act, the government is proposing a range of options for the permitted activity standards under the new National Environment Standard in relation to setback, permeable surface and building coverage. There will be some Resource Management Act matters that will fall outside of the scope of the NES, where other rules or sections of the RMA apply. And they include subdivision. So, for example, if the landowner wanted to establish a separate title for the MOU on the site. Regional plan rules, for example, on-site wastewater systems. Specific use of a minor residential unit, for example, as a childcare facility, and matters of national importance, including significant hazards, biodiversity, protection of outstanding natural landscapes, heritage overlays, and so on. So in any of those examples I've just cited, a resource consent would be triggered for the proposal to proceed. The government is seeking feedback on the discussion document from a broad section of organisations, including designers, developers, engineers, councils, insurers, surveyors, iwi and hapu, and mortgage lenders. And the closing date for submissions is the 12th of August. Subject to receiving the feedback for the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment and the Ministry for the Environment will assess the responses and provide advice to the government on ways to amend the Building Act and Resource Management Act to enable the easier building of MRUs, with the aim of giving effect to these changes by the middle of next year. It's not clear whether there will be a further chance to provide a submission on the draft policy before Act. So the Council Building, Planning, Compliance and Three Waters team have reviewed the discussion document and provided feedback on the proposal, which is included in the draft submission contained in Appendix 1, which is on page 38 of your agenda. The main points of our draft submission are as follows. We agree with the stated outcome of the policy, being to increase the supply of minor residential units to address the demand for smaller, more affordable homes. We agree with the risks that have been identified in the discussion document in relation to the proposed policy in regard to building safety and performance, trust and building quality, environmental effects, infrastructure planning and funding, and rating/property information. In regard to the proposed changes to the Building Act, we agree that establishing a new schedule in the Building Act to provide an exemption for simply designed minor residential units would be an option to address the problem, noting the risks both in the short and long term of non-compliant minor residential units being constructed, as a result of there being no oversight by a building consent authority. In relation to risk, we consider that council should be excluded from all liabilities stemming from the use of existing occupational regulation of qualified design professionals/building practitioners and the use of building code acceptable solutions, and that these liabilities should be borne by the Crown. In In relation to the Resource Management Act, we consider that enabling minor residential units to provide self-contained residential unit that is ancillary to the principal unit and held in common ownership with the principal unit on the same residential or rural zoned site should be the focus of the policy. We concur that a national environmental standard with consistent permitted activity standards is the best way to enable MRAs in the RMA system. We disagree with the proposed permitted activity standards in relation to building coverage, permeable surface and setback, and have identified additional matters that we consider should be managed by a permitted activity standard. And that includes minimum requirements for parking and access in residential zones. In regard to local government infrastructure funding, we consider that MRUs should contribute to the cost of council facilities and infrastructure on the basis that they are increasing demand, and councils need to be able to levy development contributions for all developments that result in increased demand on council facilities and infrastructure. I'm happy to provide any clarifications or answer any questions. I am a registered architect as well and a licensed building practitioner, so I'm kind of comfortable with both building and resource management aspects.
Great. So, no, just before we jump in, so this isn't a council submission on a bill. This is an officer submission on a draft paper that could form the basis of a bill before Parliament. So we're not looking for the political view. It's largely technical matters that we've addressed through this to try and assist the ministry as they work up a bill, saying, well, these are the types of issues that you might need to consider. So the purpose of this coming in front of you, number one, is to obviously have some discussion about it, but I don't see us doing a substantive rewrite of this. This is an officer submission.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think thank you for that clarity, I guess, as well. I mean, I had lots of ticks beside what was written in here actually, Barry, so that was good. And if I could just start off with one question, maybe just for my own peace of mind. It's on page 43, but it's number 18, and I'm sure Ross has got a mark beside this as well, but you know, it just talks about, you know, the reticulated wastewater systems where we've got insufficient land for on-site wastewater treatment. Like, is that something if we've got a what's it called, Granny Flat, minor residential unit, sorry, on a parcel of land where it will be difficult to put in, you know, without an urban reticulated system, you know, is that something that will be exacerbated by these minor units on residential land within some of our zone, rural land zone? You know, I just want to know, is it going to make it worse or is it going to be managed? Because it's an issue that we've been talking about for a wee while now, and you know, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's possibly to do with constraint where you're going to have a principal residential unit and a minor residential unit on quite a potentially confined site. There would be some potential practical issues around locating another septic tank on the central area. That septic tank in terms of getting a sucker truck up there to empty it to be close to the tank, those kind of practical constraints. I kind of feel that the activity standards have been very much through urban lens. And perhaps there hasn't been a recognition that in rural townships, not just rural areas, we do still have a septic tank system. Yeah, and I suppose when I read it, I thought, do we need to, you know, beef that statement up a little bit to be more reflective of our rural environment and potential inability to have one of these minor residential units because of that, you know? Yeah, I don't know what others think, but it was just my thoughts when I read it.
So maybe in small urban townships where we have existing problems getting they can't put in a disposal field, those problems will still exist.
Yeah.
Once we're out onto the 4 hectare blocks, there should be no impediments to having one residential unit. So where we've got problems currently, we'll continue to have problems.
Yeah.
Where we don't have problems, we should be fine.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's, you know, we just don't want to have a promise of being able to do something here, but not being able to fulfill it here, you
Well,
know?
just before you get into that, 90% of the Hurunui district is an extremely high or high wind zone. And so therefore you won't be able to build these things without consent, well, you can't build without consent.
Yeah.
They'll either have to come through a multi-proof system or something similar.
Yeah, okay. Let's go.
It's not particularly enabling in this district because of their high wind zone.
Yeah, great. Okay, I mean, that's kind of helpful. It sort of brings it all together, isn't it, really? But just happy to canvass any other questions or clarity for Barry. Thank you, Pauline.
Yeah, thanks. I know at 18 as well, actually, there's some notes in there about design standards. And I guess I was just kind of in my head going, crikey, even if we had a property that met the 10% of properties outside of our high wind zone, you know, how do we make sure that in places like Nutlife or Hanmer Springs, those design standards are implemented? I just wonder if I know this is an officer, but I wonder if we need to be a bit stronger on some sort of statement around that.
Yes, I would quickly beef that up. I think with the height restriction and say, for example, in Hanmer Springs, we've got a requirement for a certain pitch of roof, that potentially it could be quite difficult to achieve design standards.
So, I mean, I think Barry's been pretty clear here. It is considered paramount that these standards need to continue to be applied in these areas. I mean, you want further beefing of that?
Yeah, I guess it's just something that I have a concern about, but yeah.
But I guess, I mean, Barry has expressed it pretty strongly in here.
Yeah. No, that's cool. We've got a message coming in from Tom, who's councillor in Hanmer Springs. So, Tom.
Oh, thanks, Barry. Really like your report or your response. Two quick questions. It says that it must be located within 30 metres of the main dwelling. If I have a section big enough, can I have several units within 30 metres of my dwelling? And secondly, although you're calling them granny flats or MRUs, could they be used as Airbnbs?
In regard to the first question, so it's in the rural zone, one minor residential unit per 40 years. And with the constraint that it needs to be within 30 metres of the principal dwelling on the site, use the same access, etc. But from experience as a duty planner, that is not really seen as a constraint. Most people want to use the same access, they want to use the same infrastructure, so that they're quite happy locating it within that 30 metre distance. And yes, a minor residential unit could potentially be used as visitor accommodation, an Airbnb or a rental unit. I think that's kind of what I was trying to make the point of in the report, is that they're not really just a granny flat. Or
yes, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Question from Vince?
Just what areas in our district aren't in the wind share? Because it's sort of relevant to this, isn't it?
Barry, do you know specifically where? I don't know.
I could just log on to the brand's site, but it's pretty much most of North Canterbury is very high or extra high. It would only perhaps be where you get some lead zones, perhaps in a township where there's some buildings that would kind of create an eddy that may drop down.
Any further questions?
Just a comment, actually, I was just really pleased to see the clarification sort in regards to tiny homes and how they might fit here as well, so.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, so thank you for picking that one up. Any other questions for Barry in the document that has been written, and we've had a bit of a discussion about the context, so is there any other questions for that? If not, we do have a recommendation on page 31 of our report, so Barry, do we have a seconder? that we endorse the feedback, making it easier to build Granny Flats discussion document. So well done, thank you. Good to have you, and thank you for the explanation that you provided us. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Madam
So,
Chair.
no, thank you.
And with that, Madam Mayor, potentially when, if the government does progressively on this, you'll potentially have an opportunity to make a submission.
Yeah.
If they allow for that.
Okay, councillors, that does bring us back to the end of today's agenda. I do see that we've got Dave online now, and we did put an apology in for you before, Dave, in regard to our second item that we've just completed. So is there anything formal we need to do? We just withdraw that apology and note Dave's attendance from the second item. Yeah, okay, comfortable with that, Dave?
Yep.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, thank you, councillors. It's been another busy day as we've got through this review management plan. But I think that the work that we've done on behalf of our community is needs to be acknowledged, of course, along with our staff and our community. You know, it's a very healthy triangle, and it's a triangle that we need to maintain and grow. So with that, we will close the meeting. Thank you, Graham. Made sense of our last 2 days, and I'm sure we'll make sense of this day as well. But anyway, meeting is closed. Maybe we'll have 10 minutes, and Claire, you're going to take us through a bit of a LTP review reflect workshop.
Yep, and James will be joining us as well.
Perfect. So how about you know, just before 3 o'clock we'll make a start, and then you might get away early.
Question about